G'day guys, welcome to another live stream. I just noticed I was looking, it's not many people around, or didn't people get notifications or something? Haven't had a chance to really look at anything. I just got up about half an hour ago, so it's been a mad rush. Do the toiletry sort of stuff, and you know what I mean. Yes. G'day, Neff. A few people are streaming in. Good to see. Good to see. Raymond. Nurse Trouble. Tanks. Bluesman, good to see you here, mate. Bit of a different start. I usually get T1 here very early and ready to go. And yes. As I said, I just got up about half an hour ago. Yeah, sort of waking up late night last night. So anyway, shit happens. It's the way it goes. So anything... Got porked around in oxalate juice. I'm primed. I bet you are, Richard. I bet you are. Cellulite and zits. Hi, welcome. Surprised Lukey's not here yet. So, yes. As I was saying, had a sort of a late night last night. I did that one video earlier in the evening, and then I was just sort of doing a whole lot of other crap. Some sort of paperwork that I had sort of neglected for a while, and looking at a few other things, but, you know, as you do. Had my Roy glasses on. Few people enjoy those. Yes. At the moment, I've just got the other ones here. These are just for daytime use. That's what I use these in probably around about the midday onwards. So around about 2 o'clock onwards, or sometimes 3 o'clock. I put these on. They sort of block 50%. So they're not very good blue blocking glasses, but they block 50%, which is fine from screens and stuff like that. And then it sort of comes down. And then I switch to the other ones, the Roy glasses. G'day, Fapnado. Yeah, so that's the sort of thing. I did miss. I did notice that both Sky, she had a really early stream, but that was just too early for me anyway. But I didn't know that Bart was going to do a live stream today, but I just did notice a moment ago. I took a look and I saw the notification. I go, oh, okay, he had a live stream. So that'll be interesting for something to... I probably won't get a chance at all today to watch it, because I've got right after lunch. At lunchtime, I'm going to Dad's place. So I'm going for a walk, then Dad's, or the other way around, Dad's, and then for a walk, and then I've got the live stream. So that'll finish 9 o'clock in the evening. So I probably won't get a chance. But on Monday, when I'm at work, I'll probably just have it in the background and just listen to Bart's stream then. So, it's good to see him back on doing live streams. I did send him a link for today's stream, so I don't know whether, if the weather's really nice in New Zealand, he tends to basically go out kayaking and stuff like that. But then again, he may wander in at later part of the actual live stream. Sometimes he will pop in to the Eurasian one. So you never know your luck with Bart. He just will pop in. I always send him a link, so he's always got it. He always thanks me, and basically, if he says if I turn up, I turn up. That's basically it. So, g'day, Lukey. I know T1 is around everywhere, but a little concerned about T2. What could have T1 done to T2? Is that what you're alluding to, Richard? Yes, that evil T1. Yes, that frog, that evil frog from Western Australia. G'day, Dylan. Good to see you, mate. Lukey, as always, good to see you. You've got a link if you Yep, thanks. Yeah, please hit the like and do share. I did send you a link as well, so if you feel like coming on, G'day, Sarah. Good to see you. Hello to you as well. Yeah, me too. G'day, Sky. How's it going? I'm here to keep the live chat professional and proper. Yeah, you're probably right. With this crowd, they probably do need a bit of a spanking now and then. Yes. Good to see you. What time is it? What time is it in the UK? Bloody hell, must be early. Late. At night. You're as bad as me. Staying up late. I'm going to have to watch your live stream tomorrow. I didn't get up, so I usually watch Bart's and yours on Monday at work in the background because I just don't have the time, especially on a Sunday when I've got a full program now. Yes, and if any of my subs haven't gone to Skies and subbed or liked and stuff like that, please do. Lies. Oh, thanks, Richard. Yeah, okay. So it's nearly midnight. So you're not as bad as me then, like the early hours, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, especially on the weekends. I tend to, on a Saturday. So when I hit Sunday, which is today, I'm always getting up late and I'm sort of half asleep in the early part of the program anyway. Okay, so you're in somewhere in the British Isles or close by. A few more late nighters. G'day, Def. I'm going to shift the blame onto trouble. It's the same time over here. Over her way. Oh, yeah. But let's pretend it's 4 a.m. and she's up. Nice. Oops. Jab. Yes, and do that as well. And also not only Skies but also Bart's if you're not. Neff's actually quite late. Having trouble catching my breath. Can you suggest exercise to improve my cardio? Thank you. You're having trouble catching your breath. So you've got a respiratory thing. When it comes to respiratory things, it can be a number of things. I used to have some issues, and I did eventually find out at a much later stage that it was due to, I used to get bronchial type asthma and stuff like that. So it could be a structural thing, which basically means your lung surfactant isn't in a good nick. I don't know what your past diet is. If you had a sort of a poorer diet, you may have a lot of type of the wrong fatty acids incorporated in the lung surfactant, maybe not signaling or working properly. They can be ameliorated with choline, either from eggs, liver, or supplementation, plus, animal foods which will have palmitate. So those two will, and a low dose vitamin E that will displace those bad fatty acids that have been incorporated into the lung surfactant. That could be one. It's very hard to know about these unless I know really more details about your history and stuff like that to be able to comment on a live stream. It could take, just send me an email. My email is under the about, and give me a bit more detail about, past diets, under what circumstances and conditions. So, exercise may not be the best thing. There may be nutritional side to your problem. I don't know. So vitamin D status, is your vitamin D status low? The collagen degrading enzymes, the matrix metalloproteinases that actually regulate collagen within the actual lungs, maybe there are things that have caused some sort of fibrotic tissue development. So you need basically vitamin D to regulate those properly. So is your vitamin D status good enough? So there's a lot of questions there, and it requires much more detailed sort of. So I need some bit of background, and I can then give you some more, rather than general stuff that I've just given now that may not be applicable to you. So. Ireland, yes. Very similar time zone. What did she say? Yes. As I said, very similar time zone, all you guys. G'day, Harriet. Good to see you, mate. And I found out something interesting about Harriet. He was very much just as bad a child as I was, ripping his toys apart. And ended up becoming an engineer. There you go. I don't know the protocol, so I can't really comment. One thing that I will tell you is that your thyroid requires both iodine and selenium. So if you've got too much iodine and not enough selenium, you can get issues with the thyroid. If you've got too much selenium and not enough iodine, that could also create a few issues. So you need to basically, I do not know the protocol, so I can't actually comment on the specific protocol that I don't know about. But I can tell you that, those important minerals like zinc, selenium, iodine, they all sort of work synergistically together. Vitamin D also is an important other factor as well for good thyroid function. So there's a number of things, but when it comes to zinc, it's got to be balanced with selenium. And selenium, eggs, liver, things like a number of seafood like tuna and stuff like that. So yeah, make sure if you're doing any sort of iodine protocol, make sure you're balancing it with sufficient selenium in the diet, and you won't get any imbalances with the thyroid. Yes, thyroid, there's a lot of issues. There's methylation side. I've talked about it before about other issues that can actually drive thyroid problems as well. So there's a video that I did recently, so go and check it, whoever hasn't checked it, on my channel. I've got a bit of a croaky voice today and a bit of a had a few people around me yesterday bloody sneezed around me, so God, you never know. But yes. But I'll basically just do what I did last time. I just haven't had a chance to do it. Last time I had, that was about 2 weeks ago. I had a bit of a, like a viral cold that I picked up from somebody that was sneezing at work. And I just basically took 50,000 IUs. I took MK4, some cod liver oil to get the retinol. So I balanced all those. And I just took a big, massive dose for 2 days, gone. completely eliminated all that. I'll probably do the same thing today. Quite annoying. Yes. But, you know, it does work with high dosing. But you got to balance it with retinol, got to balance it with MK4. So, look, vitamin D does help with the uptake of magnesium, and magnesium does seem to have synergistic effects with vitamin D. But we get more than enough in the diet. If you go and check the only time you may have to worry about, if you've done long prolonged fasting, like chronic fasting, a lot of that sort of stuff, you may have suboptimal levels of magnesium. The quickest way to find out whether you've got a magnesium or potassium issue is to take high doses of boron for a week, and I can tell you will start feeling certain cramping effects and all that, and that will tell you immediately that you've got a magnesium, because it accentuates the whole issue. Yes, but that's do it for a short term, not long term. Boron should be only at about 3 milligrams on a continuous basis. So, but that higher dosing, and that was due to Christina, who elucidated that. I think it was Christina. Yes, she elucidated that to me. She's in, you know, so she basically, you know, was taking a sort of higher dose and noticed this, and it actually makes magnesium or potassium deficiencies more pronounced. So unless you know, and it's really hard to basically, it's not, you know, the tests that are out there are sort of, you know, the other easiest way is just up your dosages in terms of for a short amount of time, and then that's another way to cover that point, Richard. But there's the videos I've done. I've actually shown the excretion rate, which is 120 milligrams per day. So if you're getting more in the diet than you're excreting, there's not going to be an issue. So, you know, our ancestors or people back in the 60s and 50s and 70s and whatever else were not taking magnesium supplements. They were getting it from the diet. The problem is, the reason why people have magnesium deficiencies today is because they consume too many refined carbohydrates, and refined carbohydrates burn through a lot of magnesium. That's the problem, you know? So it's not that basically, you know, anybody that's on a species appropriate diet is getting more than enough. Believe me, I've done the video, check it out. People are making too much, you know, issue about magnesium. If you're not on a species appropriate diet, yes. If you're on a SAD diet, you're on a vegan diet, you're on one of these diets, you may be suboptimal. That's true. But you're not going to be on a species appropriate diet. You get more than enough unless you're chronically fasting and you're not supplementing, you know. So this constant issue comes up over and over again. And the other thing about salt, people saying, oh, too much salt. No, the body can regulate, get rid of salt. The kidneys have a really good method of dumping salt if there's too much. So, magnesium question was for mum on a SAD diet. Well, you need to state that, Richard, so I know exactly who I'm actually talking about. Yes. Well, yeah, you may be struggling to get her on a species appropriate diet, and she may have to supplement magnesium. Potassium can be a really tricky thing, because sometimes there can be some with water retention. There can be, you know, a certain level of retention. So it's really hard on a SAD diet. You know, they shouldn't be on a SAD diet. G'day, Bart. Good to see you, mate.
Hello, good to see you. Get myself situated. There it is.
Yes, centrally. Yeah, so I'd say, Richard, that you know, it wouldn't harm her, but the reality is it's not gonna really help her if she's on a SAD diet in any substantial way. You know, supplementing magnesium is not going to fix any real problem. She really has to move away from all that crap. If you can convince her, good luck. So things, but I didn't get. I only got up about 10 o'clock. So your stream had already finished at that stage. I had a bit of a late session last night, so I will watch your stream. I'm glad you're back on doing live streams. It's really, really good. So I'll have to fall go early to bed and get up earlier to see it.
Yeah, it went okay. I think it got up to close to 100 people at peak. YouTube is still absolutely throttling, strangling, holding down, not sending out notifications, limiting the number of people that can be on a live stream. There's no question that that's what's happening. We had a good stream, and I cleared my chest of all those issues, among other things. It was good fun.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, it's worth a look-see later.
Yeah, here's another one about magnesium. I mean, I've done about the excretion rate of magnesium, 120 milligrams per day, and on a species-appropriate diet, we get more than enough, So, and our requirements for B1 thiamine is actually half that on a sugar diet. So, you guys, you're getting more than enough. I mean, if you just have bacon, just bake it every day, you'll get about 100% of the RDI, and you only need half that on a carnivore diet. So you're not going to be deficient. And if you've also, been on a species appropriate diet, you would have actually increased your acidity, gut acidity and stomach acidity. And at the same time, those beneficial bacteria would have over time increased. Now you can with a B protocol, you can actually, and vitamin D, you can accelerate that sort of, because the beneficial bacteria do have a higher requirement of vitamin D than the pathogenic ones. But at the same time, if you're eating correctly, they will increase, and they will also produce, because they exchange B vitamins amongst themselves, some B vitamins. So you're not going to have any problems. This sort of constant supplementing. People in the 50s, 60s, 40s, they did not supplement these things, guys. They got them from the food, from real food. People are only deficient today because of eating refined crap, and they become deficient or doing chronic fasting with insufficient, electrolytes. So that's usually what causes both those issues. So, we need to stop, people are just over supplementing. It's just madness, wasting so much money on crap, on unnecessary stuff. Do you know the possibility what regulates MMPs in eyes, cornea, recently diagnosed with degenerative corneal conditions? Well, what Bart sells, that product will help Cyril because he had eye issues, and that helped him a lot, Dylan. So, and there's also things like fasting, exercise that also help with stem cells and stuff like that. And, so you can, the more you add, the better. With mitochondrial biogenesis, all these sort of things help as well. Certain types of exercise more than others, the more intense. I usually run up the stairs at work from the 2nd floor to the 9th floor, do that a couple of times a day, jogging, and that's intense. And then when I get up there, I'm sort of, dying at the 9th floor. But, that's the sort of thing you want to do to basically, and it's not the, I think you said, Bart, ages ago, I remember on one of your videos, or was it live stream? I think I was on there, and you actually said to people they should train accordingly to what they're in competition for. But the rest of us should basically be doing basically this high intensity stuff, short duration. I mean, I go up the hill where just below my place, about 20, 30 odd meters, there's just a big hill, goes straight up to Mount Stewart. Anybody that's in Hobart knows exactly, from the North Hobart Post Office right up to the top. And that's just intense, going all the way. Just basically, I've done, when I went up to Knocklofty Reserve, which is off that area, I've actually videotaped that, and I was literally panting all the way. So people know exactly, they just have to go back and see that video to know exactly what the intensity level there is. And that's the sort of stuff you do. Short duration, takes about a half an hour. You don't need any, small amounts. And then I just walk leisurely. I stop there, relax, then I walk leisurely back home. So it's not the amount. And then weightlifting, which is another good thing, and that also will increase your metabolic rate because you increase more muscle and stuff like that. And that intensity going up that hill is going to definitely make sure that your leg muscles grow as well, so that's additional capacity to store glycogen and additional capacity to basically make you more insulin sensitive. So I don't know why people are doing all these crazy cardios. I mean, unless you want to go and do the 10,000 or 5,000 or a marathon or go to the Olympics, I mean, I can't see the reason. Can you, Bart?
It's pretty much what my live stream was about this morning, Harry. It was pretty much about these people that say doing a bunch of endurance training is good and doing even more is better than that, and doing still more is yet better again. And for the too long didn't watch version, I just said, nope.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's just so damn ridiculous, all this sort of stuff. It just drives me up the wall, and it's like people not understanding. I mean, I every single this sort of, they have this crazy notion of the way ATP even works in the mitochondria, even muscles and stuff like that. They just have this weird understanding. In every single cell in your body, you're actually producing ATP through oxidative phosphorylation, and you have to build up a proton gradients. And so that's going to be pretty steady in that regard. So, I mean, you explain it really well about how those cogs work between the three sort of phases between, your phosphocreatine and then the glycogen itself, how it gets broken down and gets utilized, especially, similar to, like the chimps, which have got all those fast twitching fibers, especially if you're doing that sort of, weightlifting stuff like that, and things like that. But that's fundamental in, all muscles in that regard. So, I mean, probably the only muscle in the body that actually has that really high level of density of mitochondria is the heart. It's just incredibly dense because it sort of, it works, it has to constantly work at the same pace and all that. And it basically, if it stops, you're dead. If it basically becomes suboptimal, you will know it because you will feel like a massive shortness of breath. It's a really good indicator. That's how we know that you're having some sort of heart issue at that point. But the actual best way of basically protecting the heart, I've always said, is taurine. Taurine breaks down fibrotic tissue in all organs right through. I've shown you the evidence on a number of occasions on my live streams. It's the ultimate thing. It's what cleared out my fatty liver. It's what cleared out all my fibrotic tissue from damage to my heart. And I did the scan, which I did in November in 2019. So, the biggest problem is that people aren't eating enough animal products, so they're not getting enough taurine. Biosynthesis goes down in older age, and a lot of people are ending up causing remodeling of their heart, and taurine suppresses remodeling. It's been shown countless times in the literature, and I cannot understand why any athlete would not be taking, especially if somebody's doing like marathons and stuff like that. I mean, they drop dead left, right, and center. None of them end up as centenarians because they cause so much remodeling and damage to their heart from that sort of stuff. And obviously taurine isn't a super thing. It's not going to prevent, if you're doing excessive amount, 100 Ks, and doing these intense cardios, because you're an Olympic athlete, you're still going to get some level of remodeling. But you can slightly mitigate it as you move out of that in, your 30s or 40s. You move out of that. You can sort of mitigate some of that damage by taking higher doses of taurine. Just remember, it does lower blood pressure severely, so you've got to pace yourself up. And if you're on meds, just a warning. You got to basically adjust them and get your doctor to basically lower the dosage. So as you go up, so 1 gram, 2 grams, you don't go up to 5 or 6 grams. The highest that I've actually seen in research is about 10 grams. I tend to sort of stick to, for therapeutic reasons, up to 6. I don't like going too high in terms of, because it does have an effect on the fluids in your body and sort of regulating a lot of the electrolytes. So it does have an effect there. And I'm just, because the experiments on those equivalent of 10 milligrams were short term and were done in some cases on athletes which are really fit. So I would stick for the average punter 5 or 6. I do only 3. I did in the past those higher levels, but I'll probably go up to 5 when I get to 65, because taurine biosynthesis in the body drops off dramatically after 65. So, and I've got Dad on 65 on 5 milligrams as well, because he's 86 now. So, and so he does that, a bit of creatine as well, and he still does his weights, and his muscles keep on improving, which is really good. So he's looking at a fine 86-year-old, So he's impressing some of the other gents in the Greek community. So he can actually, show them, I got muscles compared to you old fellas. So yes, he's showing off, as these old people do. Yes, yes. What can I say?
Yes.
Oh, people did love my T levels and vitamin D. Yes, yes, yes. I haven't actually checked the comments yet. There are a few people. I quickly took a look, and there were a few comments there, but I will get back to them at some point today, probably when I get back from Dad's. What do you think? Ideal range?
It's hard to know for a given individual, for their particular needs, etc. I know you're one for supplementing vitamin D, Harry, in given circumstances. I'm really not.
Only in given circumstances. Only in given. I don't take any at the moment.
Get it from the sun. I think the place to get it from is from the sun, and that's the best way of doing it. At least for your 3, anyway. I've always been one that goes with, find the range where your function, your body function, is ideal, and that would seem to be the right level.
Yeah, so it is a hormone after all.
Deficiency, exactly. And if you're not showing signs of deficiency, then there's nothing that needs fixing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because it is a hormone after all, and we don't want to be, pushing it. The sweet spot seems to be around the sort of the 40 nanograms per milliliter, around there, that 40, or the, what is it, the.
But I mean, the whole thing with hormones, though, Harry, is they're supposed to fluctuate in their concentration as well.
That's true.
There are reasons that you should be fluctuating from time to time. It's a second messenger system, and it sets off other systems in your body as well. So, yeah, I'm not one for supplementing anything nutritionally. Really, I think, you're going to get everything you need for the most part from your diet if you have a species-specific appropriate diet.
Yeah, that's my view. I mean, supplements should only be there to either cover a deficiency or there to correct something that maybe, you've got a genetic thing. Like I use taurine for something which is quite clear. I mean, I could eat more meat, but sometimes I feel, and that's why I sort of balance it out in that way, because I like to eat certain other things that are lower in taurine, certain dairy products and stuff like that. So I could basically clean up my act a bit and not require so much taurine as well. That's true. So yeah,
I can clean my act up too.
What are you drinking there?
It's honest as appropriately guessed that it's meat juice. Meat juice is what that is.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, I'll take your word for that.
Yep.
The selenium sources. I did mention earlier eggs, liver, and well, generally organ meats, and basically things like a lot of the seafood. Tuna's pretty good, and it's got lower mercury. So if you go back there, I've got a video which I did on seafood, which I show the mercury to selenium sort of ratios, and the ones that have got the best ratios, those are the fish where they've got more selenium to mercury, and the selenide or the conversion of selenium into selenide will actually chelate that mercury out of the system anyway. So it's not a non-issue. So the only thing you have to look at is which appropriate fish are the best to get your levels. I always include certain seafood about 2 to 3 times a week. And that usually balances out my iodine, balances out a lot of things. You really, because majority of humanity before we had agriculture lived along rivers and along coastal areas. We did not really penetrate deep into inland. We followed river systems, or we lived closer. And that's another reason why civilization actually grew along those rivers eventually as well. Once the megafauna sort of decreased and we had no option, we had to shift to add some plants into the diet far more. But so our sources would have been some level of coastal fish. And you look at a lot of the older populations, the same stuff. Remember the stuff that I did on the ancient Greeks, and that was on the ancient Greeks of the early part, but even later part, a lot of them were basically consuming ruminant animals primarily, and a small amount of coastal fish, small coastal fish, like sardines, things like of that sort. The smaller type fish like the mackerels and things of that sort that you'd find in coastal areas. That's the sort of stuff that humans have been consuming for a very long time. Piglets definitely was another big thing, especially in the tribal societies of Northern Europe. There's good evidence there that piglets were basically one of the prized things. Because it was easier to access both wild and eventually domesticated sort of stuff. So these goes right back to the chimps. Their 2 foods that they primarily hunt is small monkeys and piglets.
Fuck off, chimps eat bananas, Harry.
And guess what they use the piglets for? They cut them up and they've got more fat. The females require more fat. So guess what? They're getting favors, aren't they? Dirty little monkeys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sexual favors. That's what they're actually exchanging, the little piglet meat for sexual favors.
Tinks is talking about the possibility of myself getting married to Honest. I don't think her husband would be too pleased with the idea.
God almighty. What are they talking about?
Oh, you know what they're like in the background, Harry.
Yes,
people.
Yes.
Goodness.
I know. I better, before I do that, I better actually share that. I just remembered. Lukey had something to share.
Did he?
Yes. Is that coming up? I follow a repeat type diet. Let me just increase that. Oops. Trying to impress her. I also love using reductionist claims to justify huge intakes of completely useless macronutrient group. Yes. Well aware of that. Yes, the veg-tarded and the repeat fan club. Yes. My favorite 2 crowds. Actually, I do consider the repeat group far more dangerous and insidious than what I consider the vegans.
Really?
The vegans are yeah, I don't think the vegans have got really strong arguments. I mean, it's just stupid. I mean, like I had one ludicrous idiot turn up on one of my comments, and I think, I can't remember whose it was. I think it may have been Vegan Deterioration. I put a comment there, and it was about these poor kids that were being fed kibble and how badly they were. And then all of a sudden, I put a link there that, my concerns as well about these misanthropist type behaviors and all that. And I had an idiot come along and actually just put a comment like, oh, we're frugivores, blah, 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 all this sort of crap that they put on there. And I said, okay, so it was so easy. I mean, just logically think. You've got basically the majority of humanity lives in the temperate climate. So you only have about a month or maybe a month and a half of seasonal fruit available. So what are you going to eat for the rest of the year? Your own shit like the monkeys do, is what I sort of, my comment elucidated to. There's be a lot of fucking shit recycling happening. I can only tell you that. And then basically, before refrigeration, and even in the tropics, you only had 2 seasons. The majority of humanity have always consumed, even in the tropics, when they've actually, in times of agriculture now, they consume tubers because they can store them, and grains, which they can store. But for the rest, prior to agriculture, there was only meat. There was only animals available. Even in the tropics, there was only, even in the warm, like the interglacial periods, which are warmer, even in those periods, we had basically only small amounts of sugar available in terms of fruit, seasonally twice. The rest of the year, so you're talking about, 7-8 months, there's nothing but animals, even in the tropics. So it's complete and utter ludicrous, these sort of things. They can be counted so easily, but that's the sort of illogicality. But when it comes to the repeat people, how they work their sort of shit is with all this reductionist nonsense. So they work the reductionist lines on sugar, on all these, about thyroid, about all this sort of stuff. And they have had some success. I mean, I've countered some of those arguments like you have as well. But, these questions keep on coming up, cropping all over the web. And you can only cover so many things, but it's insidious. They are far more problematic because their arguments seem, it's pseudoscience, but it seems to come, it sounds logical to people that are especially people that are not trained or have sufficient knowledge in biochemistry, physiology, and many other things, many other aspects of the way the human body works, and a historical perspective. Very few people in the world would even understand the N15 data. So there is, so there's a lot of things that people are completely ignorant about. So when you listen to these people putting their arguments, it can very easily, they can be manipulated and tricked. And so I see them as much more dangerous, where when it comes to the vegan arguments, they can be obliterated so easily. They're laughable in my personal view anyway. What do you think?
Fair enough. I mean, I just kind of figured that all of those arguments are equally laughable. I hadn't really thought to place a value of ludicrousness on the different ones. You might be right. I mean, I still get people arguing with me far more often who claim to be veg-tarded than those who claim to be peat-tarted.
Yeah, look, I get that as well. I get, yeah. But I still think that the veg-tards still occupy a small niche. They don't occupy, I mean, it's like the carnivore community. Our communities occupy a small niche within the general society.
Yeah.
I don't think we actually basically have the sort of the dominance that certain groups have. Look, I could be completely wrong about people's influences, but I just think that the Ray Peat type crowd, or crowds that are very similar to the Ray Peat, tend to have, the Lane Nortons, all these sort of people, they tend to have a sort of a bigger, effect on far more people. You'll have them influencing far more people in sort of the bodybuilding world and all sorts of areas. It's just something that I've noticed. As I said, but I could be completely wrong on that point.
Anyway, they're all fuckwits.
Yes, exactly. Now, let me just... I've got another little video from Lukey, so let me just find it. Now he's sending me videos. Oh, God. Okay, let's share this. And I better make sure that...
Click the share audio in case there's an audio.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Because actually, there is a video, and I won't use a video file option. Have you actually used a video file option yet on the StreamYard?
I haven't, but there is one there now. You can click share video and select the video, and apparently it'll do it. So I don't know. I haven't been using a lot of.
Actually, I'll try it for the hell of it. Let's try it.
Let's do it live, just for fun. See what happens. I haven't been using StreamYard a lot because I haven't been doing a lot of live streaming. So, ooh, exciting! Got your popcorn ready?
Well, there you go. Megan's explaining all the plants and supplements you need just to have a shot at surviving with poor health.
Very good. Mm-hmm.
That sounds
Jesus,
right.
Look, it looks like Frank's put on a lot of weight there, though, hasn't it?
Yeah, it does. He's actually eating. Somebody's told me he's actually eating cookies and stuff like that.
Oh, apparently he's completely off the planet, even more than beforehand.
Oh, really? He's lost the plot that badly?
Yeah. Apparently he's completely lost the plot, yeah.
Okay. Hi, my father is having trouble with hemorrhoids. I'll tell him to cut out fiber, but lots of people eat fiber, get hemorrhoids issues. It's hard. It's a hard solution to sell him in his. The problem is most people are just eating the wrong sort of stuff. So it's nearly impossible. What would you tell a person that basically is on a sad diet that has these issues? There's very little solution to that within that paradigm that I can think of.
Go carnivore. Go 100% carnivore. Get it done.
Yeah. But that's the only thing you can tell them.
Have some of them. Get them down here.
Yeah.
Judd.
I found 1 gram of ascorbic acid plus 10 grams of glutamate effective to prevent colds. What do you think about that?
If you think it works for you and you're convinced it was working for you and it's not causing any problems for you, I would say don't fix it. But I wouldn't suspect that it actually is doing anything of that nature or fixing anything.
Yeah, look, you
run the risk of oxalate issues.
That's the thing with especially that amount of both. Even a lot of glutamine on its own as a supplement can actually generate a lot of oxalate as well. Both. So
your immune system is designed to deal with pathogens. Let it do it.
Yeah, I remember when I was on a sad diet taking mega doses of vitamin C. Didn't do anything. I still had more colds than I have nowadays. So, I can't see any logic in that. It's just been well marketed for so many years. Watch your live stream gets cut up and Harry sees himself on it. Oh, well, that'll be interesting.
Apparently, Sky has done a troll of us anti-vegans and stuff, which should be in her usual style. So that'll be good to have a laugh
and
at.
I wasn't included. Oh,
apparently, you were.
No, she's talking about she's gonna cut me in now. Oh, because she actually on her page, because I haven't seen it yet, she actually only had you guys, not me. So she may be cutting me in. That'll be fun.
Wow. There you go. There's plenty to share around, isn't there, Sky?
You know what? As long as they're talking about you, it's better than not talking about you at all.
Sure.
Is what I think.
Sure. Zakia.
Yes. G'day. Good to see you here.
Who apparently tells me she's too shy to give me an interview. But she's not too shy to send me pictures of herself in a bikini.
Oh, well. Different people have different levels of shyness or different types of shyness. I guess
nice pictures, by the way.
There's Loki.
Loki. Hello. General Luke of the Meat Militia. What have you got for us today, son?
Oh, just joining in as usual. I hope my audio isn't bad because I have my fan on again.
Sounds all right from here.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I've got a fan here as well because it's so damn hot in here.
No, it is the same struggle as always. The lowest setting is already too much, so I'm always worried about the noise. But yeah, nothing much new on my side. Just joining in as usual.
Did you get a chance to check your D levels and your thyroid?
No, not yet, Harry.
Oh, you haven't done that. But you're feeling great, which is the main thing.
Yes, I'm feeling really great. And I think I just gotta endure maybe the next month and a half, and then I'll just be working, just focusing on my job, because for now I'm finishing my studies and struggling with the job, so it's like a miracle I even have some time to enjoy my Saturdays and stuff. But it's working out, and soon enough I'll be done with the classes and I'll just focus on my job, and I'll have more time to focus on properly getting my diet in the right place, and also going after blood tests and all that. But for now, I don't have much time to spare beyond this.
Fair enough. Dylan's asking, do you think copper could play a role with people claiming sensitivity to liver? I haven't heard that, but I can tell you from my own experience in the Greek world, Greeks back in the 70s and 80s in particular, now only in rural areas, consumed quite a bit of organ meats, but mixed organ meats. There were some liver type foods that we call friganella, which are small cut circular type things on a skewer, and they like liver tips. So slightly cooked more, so you lose a bit of the micronutrients in that regard. And I used to consume them at least twice or three times a week because they're really nice and crunchy, and they use rosemary, so it takes in the flavour and changes the whole flavour of the thing. And that was a favourite little snack that I used to use together with other things. But look, the body has got within your gut, there are these proteins that I've actually explained before. You have to check one of my other videos, and they basically will transport in different minerals, and the body usually knows if you're getting it from food, the type of minerals that it actually requires. As long as you provide sufficient copper, zinc, these things, the body will take in what it needs and not take in what it doesn't need. The problem is a lot of us actually are using supplements and tend to create these imbalances because of supplements. That's what I find mostly. I haven't heard of, if you're not eating organ meats, only organ meats, and you're eating, muscle meats and seafood and all sorts of other things, I don't think you're going to really have any problems. I mean, I haven't come across historically any problems with any populations, and even with myself that eats that way. So I don't know about you guys, what your experience is. Plants tend to have more copper anyway.
Yeah. I've never had any issues of that kind.
Yeah. I just I think to a large extent some of this stuff is not coming directly from the carnivore community, but it's coming from people that are doing a lot of keto type and maybe doing a lot of organ meats and not a lot of muscle meats because they fear too much iron and stuff like that. And there's all this sort of nonsense out there that just drives me up the wall. People need to remember that even when, I've had 2 or 3 people on the live stream and even some people emailing me saying that they had hemochromatosis and they don't have an issue anymore. Now, while on a carnivore diet. And I think what actually happens is, there is no science, unfortunately, but I think that heme iron, which is critical, if you take a look, cytochromes in your mitochondrial, chain or anywhere else in your body, like especially with detoxification P450, what's at the heart of it? Heme iron. I think basically the problem isn't heme iron. I think it basically is probably the non-heme ions that are getting in there and causing some dysregulation, because most people find these sort of issues with hemochromatosis on a standard diet, which is bringing in a whole lot of non-heme iron, and on basically, keto type diets and stuff like that. A lot of people getting on a carnivore diet that are only getting heme iron and not the non-heme iron, that I think that is probably causing a lot of the dysregulation. I can't prove it, but from anecdotes, seeing what people are telling me, it seems more plausible that, something that the body has learned to regulate over millions of years would not be the problem, but something that the body has not learned, and some people may have an inability to manage that overload that's coming in from non-heme iron. What are your views, guys?
Yep, sounds good. Like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say the same. And to be fair, I've heard that like heme iron, since it is the form that is actually found in animals, we should have a better ability to regulate it.
Yeah, that's and it's only basically from these new anecdotes that are coming from people with hemochromatosis that are in the carnivore community.
Mm-hmm.
And the only people that I see constantly talking about hemochromatosis issues are people that are eating plants, whether it's on a SAD diet, on a vegan diet, a vegetarian diet, or a keto paleo diet. I don't see people in the carnivore space. On the opposite, they actually seem to resolve, and that's where I had that sort of that affinity. I'm going, okay, so if they're actually if it's not the heme iron, it must be the other iron forms that are coming in from plants. And I would say also then, based on that, that people that are basically consuming, that have got hemochromatosis, possibly should be getting their selenium, their other sort of minerals and phospholipids and whatever else that they usually get from eggs. They maybe should getting it from organ meats like liver, and giving eggs a miss, because a lot of the iron, pretty much in eggs is non-heme. So that could cause them a problem if they consume a lot of eggs. I think it's a hypothesis of mine based on all these anecdotes, because we don't have any research. Unless somebody does a research paper that actually uses people with hemochromatosis and puts them on different types of iron, and then determines what's actually happening, how the body's actually responding to those, we will never know, because there's no research. I haven't seen any.
Just is it? Just anecdotes.
Basically, that's it. That's it. That's it.
Anecdotes.
But
Unfortunately, that's all I've got for you, Bart. Just anecdotes, mate. Just anecdotes.
Just anecdotes. Whoa,
priceless. But speaking,
hey, there's a challenge for you to get some of your mates in the scientific community to basically do some of this research. Maybe somebody can get a Nobel Prize for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, they would prove basically that the difference between other heme and the other form of iron. So, and that would be a slam dunk if we had that research. And then on top of that, it would basically also be a big, plus for the carnivore community. I'll leave you to ponder that point. That maybe you could actually mention it. Look, I don't have any contacts in the scientific community. I know nobody, bar yourself. But you've got sort of connections there. Maybe somebody may be interested in doing something like that.
Maybe.
Yeah, it would be an interesting study to basically, get a definitive study on hemochromatosis and, heme iron and non-heme iron.
Of course, most people in the scientific community at the moment are focused on that other issue at the moment.
LDL.
No, the issue with the Wu flu.
That as well.
All pervasive.
Yes. Something that's just slightly worse than the common cold, and yes, we've destroyed our world or turned it upside down. And do you realise there's going to be more variants? They are really disappointed that they're not going to be more strains. It's not behaving like the flu. How awful of this virus not to behave like the flu and produce more strains. It's only producing, the damn thing's only producing other variants. How could we keep the whole society locked down forever if we don't have more strains and we only have variants that the existing approaches may work? It's really disappointing for them. You can see the exasperation in their eyes. The gravy train is going to stop potentially for them.
This variant.
Do I sound too cynical to you?
No.
No, but I was going to say this variant nonsense. Like just the other day, one of my friends groups on like messages and stuff, they were like, "Oh my God, is this true?" And they were circulating a news piece that was saying that back in my hometown, there is a case of the new Brazilian variant of the virus. And I'm like, guys, stop talking about this. It doesn't matter. Like you're buying into this is bait and you're biting hard at it.
Yeah. I think they have a plan, guys. I think that there is a number of different variants of things that they will release at the time that they feel it's prudent to release those things. And it's all about control. It's about getting everyone to comply. It's about control. It's about this reset agenda. It's about population control. It's about the socialist agenda. So what we all need to wake up to and what we all need to realize is we are not going back to normal. We are not going back to prior to March 2020 until enough of us stand up, link arms, stand together, face this thing head on and say, no, we are not having this. We are not putting up with this. This is not the new normal. This is not okay. This is not the government looking after our best interests. This is a criminal conspiracy to try and depopulate the world. And in order to get it to happen, they need to get us to retrain our brains to comply with their every whim and their every mandate. And they have complete control over the media, which makes their job easier. they have complete control over the big tech, the social media platforms. That makes their job easier. Anyone who is a dissenter to the narrative is silenced in some way or another. And we are all sitting around here and allowing this to occur.
The thing that I do agree with you that it is definitely the elites are using this. I don't think that they're actually releasing anything, but I do think that they are basically capitalizing on these. The reality is there's always going to be viruses, always going to be variants, there's always going to be something out there. They've just basically worked out that they can use this to control. And that's what they're going to continue doing, using these things. It'll be, one after whatever turns up, it'll be irrelevant how it turned up. It just basically will be used to control. And I don't think both sides of politics are just as bad. Both sides of politics have got, whether you take a look at, in Germany, it's Christian Democrats, which is conservatives, just as bad. In the UK, conservatives just as bad as the Ardern's of the world. They're all basically in it together. We need to realize that the political elite are basically what I call an elected aristocracy. That means we don't have direct democracy. These are an elected aristocracy that basically are controlled by powerful elites behind them. Since the pharaohs. The difference is that in the past, the population has been a bit more rebellious, and they have had to give ground to the population. And what they've realized is that with, from seeing how successful Goebbels was in using the TV and newsreels and cinema to control the population in Germany, and what they did in other parts of the world like Soviet Union, China, and other areas like that. And they're basically now implementing the same approaches in countries like Australia, New Zealand, the US, Canada, and many other parts of the world. It's the same approach, and it's basically to manipulate people to both fear, because fear is a very good way of controlling population. The unknown, and we are the protectors sort of thing. We are the this sort of aristocracy that can protect you, or as Plato would say, the philosopher kings. It's this sort of crowd that has actually emerged in the 21st century, and they realize that basically, their whole system is crumbling at the seams. The contradictions and crises within their economic system are so bad because, as I've said, all systems that are created by humans are inherently unstable and inherently flawed. Capitalism included, all of them. Humans are not, we think we're gods, but we're not. That we basically can create the perfect system. We don't. We always create, and that is why we get one crisis after another crisis, and it's always crisis management. They fear the masses because they are developing a system where they're automating so rapidly a whole lot of areas of the economy that basically they can't extract enough. If you basically can produce more products than your consumers can buy, you've got a problem there, because they will end up outside the system in a dystopian type world. And then they could become very rebellious and take the capital. So what they are trying to do is basically, I do agree that they've realized that human nutrition and the current situation is basically destroying the birth rates. And, the Pottinger's, cat type scenarios being played out with humans, with kibble. They're intensifying it with kibble. And most of the people that are woke out there think, oh, we're looking after the little furry creatures, because they're so disconnected from nature. And they're basically living in their own little hermetically sealed homes in big cities. And this is what's happening. It's a long-term agenda by these groups to survive. They've seen the rebelliousness of the 19th century and earlier, and wars and all that, and how a lot of this instability can actually dethrone them. And they are scared. And so what they now is doing is using all these mechanisms of control, because social media is a great mechanism. TV is a great mechanism. The radio is a great mechanism. Fear, you know, and it's sort of the light hand of authoritarianism. It's a light hand. Even China is not, you know, beyond the Uyghurs. China generally is playing the nationalist card within its population, and it's got a much lighter version compared to Mao in terms of control, or overt control. So it's all sort of more passively, more trying to cajole the population, whether it's a sort of a nationalist agenda. Again, you're supporting some elite and their agenda, or whether it's basically, you know, sort of the environment and all this. Again, these guys are capitalizing. If you take a look, you know, it's basically the big tech and the bankers. I mean, the bankers love basically these sort of issues because they can sell carbon credits. They can make shitloads of money. There's no other growth industry beyond, you know, cryptocurrency. There's nothing else. Everything else basically is just shit. I mean, if you take a look at the stock market, the valuations and all that, I mean, the earnings levels of these companies are non-existent, you know, really low. It's only cheap credit that keeps these zombie companies going. And that's the whole thing. It's a whole edifice that they're trying to keep going and keeping the population sort of, you know, under control through fear, through handouts, through manipulation, through, oh, we're all in it together and all this sort of bullshit. And that's how they're trying to manipulate us. The only way, I've said from the beginning, we lived in full control as a collective group of humans for millions of years, and only for a short period of time in ancient Greece did we actually establish direct control by the commons. Unless we actually are able to create popular movements that are not left or right, but popular movements that don't divide us, but basically unite us in the view. Because one thing, when you're basically fighting for direct democracy, it doesn't matter whether you're left or right, because basically, or whether you've got conservative ideas or non-conservative ideas, because at the end of the day, you'll be able to express them like any other person in a common assembly. So the thing that would unify us would be basically all people from left to right would unify us as something to create a direct. We can use a blockchain to secure that sort of system so nobody can control it, because it's a distributed system. There are a whole lot of methods we could actually use and create much better societies. But we've got a big struggle, I can tell you, we're in this world, because there are forces on this planet that basically do not care about the majority of us humans. They basically want to survive, and the less humans there are, the less rebellious there are, the less robots they need to secure their position on the planet. They don't need humans, basically, because more and more the robots will be able to produce everything they need. So these people have got a post-human, the elites have got a post-human idea of how they will survive, the future. And a lot of us are not included in that plan, I can tell you. So, yes, quite dark.
Yeah.
A bit of chat in the background about people feeling like, what happens if my employer forces me to have this shot, or what if somebody forces me to. Okay, let's be really clear on this, kiddies. Nobody can mandate or force you to allow anybody to inject anything into your body that you do not want injected, that you do not submit to or agree to. You have rights as a human being. In any of the Western nations in the world, you can sue. They cannot discriminate against you. If you choose to exercise your absolute inalienable right of autonomy over your own medical treatment and your own body. Anybody who tries to take anything away from you, be that employment, freedom of any kind, including movement of any kind, access to any facilities of any kind whatsoever, they are in breach of the Human Rights Act in any country you like, and you can sue. You cannot be forced.
And
you
there's
can
also
only be coerced.
the free movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So
there's also the free, like in Australia, the Constitution has got free movement.
Do not allow it. Do not be coerced. Do not submit. Stand your ground and say, no, I will not have that shot. And no, you will not be taking my job off me. It is my right to say no.
Yeah. The biggest problem with a lot of these vaccines is they haven't tested them sufficiently. They're basically an experiment. They're actually experimenting on people currently, injecting them without having sufficient testing done. With traditional vaccines, there's been a long period of testing to make sure that there are no issues with them. You know, probably the only one that I would, if it became very difficult, because not everybody lives in a Western democracy. Some people do not. And if you're living in a society
like
where...
in Australia, you don't. In New Zealand, we don't anymore either.
No, that's true. But, you know, the least problematic is a more traditional one where they've just used the actual deactivated proteins of the actual virus itself, and that's the norovirus, which is a more traditional one, and that's the closest to a traditional one that if you were compelled for whatever reason, you know, decided, that would be the least problematic. You know, where you could, without sufficient testing, you could say it's probably the most traditional in form, and you know, it's more like the flu vax, where the traditional flu vax, not some of the new ones, but the traditional ones that were just using the actual a big amount of dead proteins of the actual virus itself. So in that regard, it's no different. It's like getting a small viral load in a similar way, and your body will respond with an immune response.
Right. Here's another comment right there. You have to have vaccines to attend public schools. No, you don't. No, you don't. You say, no, my child has the right to attend this school. You cannot exclude my child because my child is not having a vaccine. It is a breach of human rights, and you can go to court.
Well, not even in Australia you can do that. For many other vaccines, is people that are against them for their own reasons, basically have had no issues with that. So I can't see that they would. There is no. Yeah, who knows what governments are going to try and do. I think they're going to try and just create fear and hoodwink people, basically. It's just basically, if you threaten people and they think that they're going to be, that potentially things could happen against them, you know, they could be charged or stuff like that, even though they may not be able to carry it right through a legal system, you know, successfully. You know, just the threat is enough to basically probably intimidate enough people to go and do it.
Well, that's the problem. That's what I'm saying to people. You need to stand up and you need to say no. Unacceptable. No, you don't have that right. No, you can't exclude me. No, you can't take my occupation off me. No, no, and I will take you to court. The reason this is happening is because too many people are allowing it.
Exactly.
You have to say no. So
just one other question, Bart. Remember I mentioned about the Waitangi Treaty. Are there provisions under that? Because you guys don't have a constitution. Any provisions under that? Sort of that. Have you looked into it?
There are all sorts of things that are ascribed to or proposed to be covered by the Treaty of Waitangi, which, for those that don't know, is the founding document, apparently, for the modern New Zealand. It is a treaty between the Crown, the British Crown, that is, and a selected majority of chieftains of a number of disparate tribes who were collectively known as the Maori, who actually did not have a centralized form of government of their own, did not have a king or queen of their own or a leader of their own. They were all separate individual tribes. So in effect, some of the Maori signed the document in the first place, and some of them actually did not. So it's on tenuous ground before you even get going much further. The document itself has 3 clauses. They are quite explicit. They make 3 quite clear, quite explicit statements. None of those statements refer to employment, nor opportunities, nor healthcare, nor viruses. The thing was written in the 1740 or something. It's an explicit document that makes explicit statements about the rights and responsibilities of both the Maori who were living in New Zealand at the time and the influx of British folks who were coming. And the thing was signed because the Maori understood that the sheer weight of numbers of the British that were coming, whether they liked it or not, could wipe them out if there was a disagreement. It was in their best interest to sign this thing and get a peace happening so that the British Army didn't just arrive and just wipe them all out, basically. So anyone that says, oh, the Treaty of Waitangi guarantees me the right of such and such because I'm a Maori, or something like that, no, it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't at all. But the
it
thing
was just
is
basically a peace treaty between the 2 communities.
Exactly. But the thing is interpreted
So
as
slaughter each
saying
other.
a whole bunch of things that it doesn't say, and it's said to promise a whole bunch of things that it doesn't promise at all.
So
actually,
it's basically something to prevent a slaughter of one community by another.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a bit like some of the treaties in America that were basically then violated, but at least initially signed. The only difference was the British Crown didn't violate them in any substantial way.
The first clause of the treaty says that the Maori concede to the British Crown for all time the right to govern, to set laws,
okay,
and to install a governor who is called the Governor General to run a government, which is the Westminster system. Basically, we have a slight change on the Westminster system here these days, but we have the same sort of system of government that the British have. We have a prime minister, we have a ruling party, we have an opposition party, we have minor parties that play minor roles in and around all of that. We have wastage like you wouldn't believe in government. We have all sorts of crazy shit going on like that. But that was the first thing. It said the Maori concede the right of governorship to the Crown. Simple.
Yep.
The Maori, of course, had no concept of that because they didn't have a society of that kind. They didn't have laws per se. They didn't have a penal system. They didn't have a taxation system or a system of money or indeed writing.
Well, they had their own tribal laws and customs.
They had They had their tribe. They had their customs and law, spelled LORE, if you like.
Yep.
Absolutely. And there's
but it was they were customary laws rather than sort of the way laws are today, which is codified.
Exactly. And as I say, the Maori were a bunch of disparate tribes. They weren't a people living in the country as a group. Okay, so that was the first thing. The second thing was that it said that the Maori retain a thing called rangatiratanga, which is a concept, and the closest that we can get to it with English is guardianship over. So rangatiratanga of the land is guardianship of it, looking after it, protecting it, being sustainable with it, and also with that came responsibility.
So it's a sort of a land management.
Well, it is, Harry, yes, but it's deeper than that, because it also says this: any tribe who wants to claim rangatiratanga over a piece of land must stand shoulder to shoulder with their fellow warrior, and they must defend that piece of land against all comers to the last man standing.
Okay.
The second they accept muskets, blankets, green bits of paper that can be folded up, food, or anything else you like in return for that piece of land, even if it's fair value or not, what have they done? They have
relinquished their right.
They have relinquished their rangatiratanga right there. The second they walk off that piece of land and don't stand there with their taya heart and their midair and say, we are here to defend this, you bring it on and we'll fucking eat you. The second they turn their back and walk away, done. Finished.
So really gave them bugger all rights. It really made them very vulnerable to loss of land and everything else under the sun.
What makes you think the English would put together
exactly
to the people that the only reason they're writing this treaty at all is so they don't have to kill them all?
Exactly. Yeah. So they don't have to go to the trouble of where there'd be a lot of casualties on both sides.
They were hoodwinked with a concept that they had no idea about what it was. Yeah. Basically.
If you ask other New Zealanders, some politicians, you listen to some politicians and all that, you would get the idea it was very different than what you've explained, and you've actually explained it correctly. Because a lot of early treaties between a lot of native people are very similar in nature.
Yeah, and even in my country, if I speak out and say what I've just said in polite conversation, my God, I am a bigot. I am the worst kind of Nazi there is. I am a white middle class cunt. How dare I say what I've just said, even though it is absolutely irrefutable fact.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
A lot of these native treaties are basically that. It's basically hoodwinking the natives that don't understand, those sort of laws and stuff like that, and pretty much saying, well, we're going to take everything off you, but we're not going to kill you. It's basically it. That's it's basically, we're not going to annihilate you, but we're going to strip you of everything, and pretty much that's why would anybody find it surprising is beyond me. But if you take a look at history of humanity, it's pretty much the standard motif. So why would it be different?
And having said all of that, the third and final article of the Treaty of Waitangi, boys and girls, says that the Maori have the exact same rights as do the British folk.
So basically, a lot of these people that are talking about the treaty. So basically, what these people are talking about, have no idea what they're talking about.
Correct. So, number one, the Maori concede the right to the British Crown to govern the country, to set laws, to run the show. 2, the Maori retain their traditional right to rangatiratanga. Great. How many Maori are still standing shoulder to shoulder on their land, defending it from the white man? None. Okay, well, we're done with that. Number 3, the Maori have the same rights as any British subject. In fact, they become one, with the same standing as any other British subject. Not preferential, the same. So I think we're done here, aren't we, with the treaty?
Yeah, pretty much. So you're basically a government. Basically, the New Zealand is governed, has no constitutional, no real document that beyond the politicians. So pretty much it's a free for all for Parliament to do as it likes.
Yep.
That's even compared to other nations around the world that have got a constitution or a Bill of Rights or whatever that restricts Parliament to some extent. Basically, you could say, because Australia has a constitution that limits the absolute power of Parliament. So really, the political aristocracy of New Zealand then has absolute power, like a monarchic type collective.
Yeah. Okay.
Because basically, power, you've got no constitutional to restrict or contain them. They can actually, in a sense, just put any legislation they like.
The actual power in New Zealand is the head of our state is Her Majesty the Queen.
obviously,
or her
through the Governor
delegate.
General.
So her delegate is, in the course of normal business, her delegate is the Governor General, who is a person selected by the Crown to be that person.
Yeah, but the only protections there is basically things that derive from the Magna Carta or common law. That's it.
Correct. Yeah,
that's the only protection you've got is common law protection.
If the Queen is not in the country, but her son, for example, is, then he's the head of state while ever he's in the country. If he's not there, then the next royal line, if he's there or she's there, then they're in charge until you get to the Governor General, who is usually the person who's closest to the Crown, who is in charge. They're in charge on paper. The actual power is wielded by government itself. The government makes the laws. The government decides the spending. The government raises the taxes. The government does all that stuff. The government governs the country on behalf of the Crown in exactly the same way it does in the UK.
But the biggest problem is that what I can see is that the government can actually encroach on civil liberties far more than it can in other countries that have got a constitutional framework.
Sure.
That's where the risk lies in comparison, and that's why you don't see the same sort of push of some of this sort of more extreme sort of controlling legislation that you see in New Zealand currently. I mean, they're talking about even sort of internment camp type situation where you're not getting that in Australia, but that's
we've got them here.
Sort of really, well, not yet, but it's really quite heavy-handed that because we've
got them running right now.
You've got internment camps that people are forced, whether they literally come into the homes and literally drag them out.
Yep,
that's not happening in Australia.
No, but it is happening.
But it's happening in New Zealand. You're telling me?
Yeah, it is.
Shit. Yeah, that's bad.
The New Zealand police can come to your home or any other place as they see fit, private property or not, if you have been electronically tagged as having been in the vicinity of a breakout of this virus, which they're inappropriately diagnosing and people using an inappropriate method for so doing anyway, they can remove you against your will if needs be. In other words, they can arrest you and take you to said concentration camp and hold you there for not less than 2 weeks at their whim. And to get release from their concentration camp, you have to supply a clean PCR. Otherwise, you're there for another 2 weeks.
So if you're basically overweight or obese or something like, people that tend to basically seem to basically have more of the shedding of viruses or whatever, and tend to basically so you could potentially be in there for a month or more.
Yep. Oh, and by the way, you pay for it too.
You pay for it,
and you pay for it.
So you lose your employment.
Yep.
You're incarcerated, and you pay for your incarceration. What the hell is happening in New Zealand?
Welcome to the Socialist Republic of Argentina, formerly known as New Zealand.
God almighty.
That's what happens when you vote in a left-wing party with an absolute majority. That's what happens. You fucking idiots.
Well, it's probably, people in New Zealand probably should have a long time ago sort of demanded some sort of constitutional sort of framework to limit what these politicians could do. I mean, this is a consequence of now in hindsight that some New Zealanders are realizing that, but the reality is that they have not. That's just really heavy-handed. I mean, even in Australia, the only people that basically are forced to pay are people that were overseas that came back into the country. And didn't, like certain people that when they were told you can't leave the country left and then came back and sort of, the state said, well, we're not going to pay because, but if somebody basically within Australia, I mean, let's say I had something and I got a test, they would tell me to isolate at home for 14 days. Like my sister did. She isolated in Western Australia at home. She was coming back from Melbourne and she was required to isolate for 14 days. She wasn't dragged out She didn't lose her job. You know, she wasn't incarcerated and then forced to pay on top. You know, when she was in the country, she hadn't traveled or anything like that. I mean, that is just crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if that's happening, that is, you know, I mean, why aren't people hearing about this? Why aren't people basically around the world criticizing the New Zealand government for this sort of heavy authoritarian, you know, behavior?
Because
that's just wrong.
Self-serving logic, Harry. You look at the death toll here in New Zealand for COVID-19 total from the entire event from March 2020 until now. 25 individual people in New Zealand have died with the virus, so-called. So
let me ask you this one: how many people died? Did you? Some countries around the world that have had like very high rates. I mean, Ivor Cummings has done a lot of this, looked into it, where certain countries that had very high levels of influenza deaths, that cleared out a lot of the vulnerable people. Yeah. The subsequent years, like COVID, had much lower. And there are so many variations. Some masked, some didn't. Some societies locked down, some didn't, and still had very low. If they had a lot of death rate, that means they cleared out those vulnerable people, because the average is about 80 around the world.
Yeah.
So it's usually the most vulnerable people where that are basically frail, or that are primarily dying. Yes, a few others are dying, but primarily those people on average in those late. So I don't know what the stats are. Have you looked at the stats of New Zealand the last couple of years, whether they had very high death rates of people with the flu in New Zealand, or have you been able to see any of that stats, or haven't had a chance?
I don't think that the flu rate was any higher leading up to, or higher than normal for the last.
I'm talking about the not the flu rate, the death rate from the flu.
No,
in past years.
However, of course, now that we've got this COVID thing, the death rate from all other causes, including flu and cancer and everything else in the world, is almost none, because everybody that's dying is dying of COVID, of course. But the whole thing with Jacinda Ardern, our Prime Minister, and she's actually being lauded around the world as being a strong leader and taking control, and isn't it great what she's done, and look how low New Zealand's death rate has been as a result of what she's done. No, our death rate is really low because we are out the back of bumfuck.
That's true.
Exactly.
You know, the nearest place to us is Tasmania,
basically,
and
the next place is at Antarctica.
Exactly. You know, and it's just fucking miles, and like the one thing that
I'll tell you one thing, mate. It's the same thing in Tasmania. It's the same thing in Tasmania. I mean, I've been walking around. We haven't had one real incident, really serious. We had a small incident in the north when there were, and that was about it. That was ages in the last year in the early part, and since then there's been nothing. Yeah. And I mean, we walk around. There's, you'll find a few people that wear masks, but I would say 90 plus, 95, 96% don't. And pretty much there's not an incident inside.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. So New Zealand is very similar to Tasmania in that regard. You've got a community that's far away. You don't have a lot of people, because the majority of people that were coming from overseas. We had a lot of tourism.
Yeah.
And when that cut, we really had very little coming in as tourism, and that pretty much eliminated the whole problem. So it's a similar effect. Yeah. It doesn't mean we don't have vulnerable people.
Of course we do. But
if
at the end of the day, what happened in New Zealand is they closed the borders quickly.
That's it. That's exactly it. You guys closed it much quicker than us. Yeah, we didn't. We still were allowing planes to come in, cruise ships to come in, and all sorts of things, and that's how we had all these outbreaks. But the reality is, if we had closed the borders much earlier as well, we would have had the same result. So I fully understand, but this sort of craziness then going from that level, that it's just madness. It's beyond belief that the population has fallen for this thing that 25 people, when you look at the past years, hundreds and thousands of people have been dying. We've gone from, if we take a look at the death rate in the US pre-COVID, 8.6 per 1,000 people. In Britain, slightly higher, 9.3 per 1,000 people. In terms of COVID in the UK, guess what it was? 3 in 1,000.
Right.
So basically, and that's in the COVID era we're talking about. We're not talking about COVID itself. We're talking about, because I know they're lumping a lot of things on COVID, but just in the COVID era. So basically, we've seen a dramatic reduction down to a third. So, the sort of lockdowns have reduced it to a third, but you know what? They've devastated our economies as well. There is no logic to that. I mean, you can't stop people from dying. Okay, you give somebody who's frail an extra couple of months or an extra year. Societies need to balance those things out. They can't basically just go crazy. I mean, you basically, how many people are going to die from suicides because they've lost their jobs? How many people are going to die in the coming years from, having spent 4 decades building up a business and losing all that, and people from poverty and all that? We know a lot of people die or get very unhealthy because of poverty. They can't afford quality foods and all that. So none of this stuff is factored in. Yes, okay, we've saved a couple of frail people who are going to die anyway, maybe a few months earlier than normal. This is just crazy. We can't run society like that. It's just that it's just a madness. But what it's giving,
not the idea, Harry.
What it's giving,
I don't want to run a society. I want to destroy one.
That's the thing, and they do want to do it because basically they want to control it. Because ultimately, as remember I said in a live stream ages ago to you when we were talking, that about these negative interest rates and all the sort of policies that they're actually doing, it just seems like they don't really need us anymore, don't want us.
Well, what they want is a world population of 500 million.
Yes, with a small elite and an army of robots protecting them and running everything.
Which means what they want is for 7,300 million people to die. And they're doing their utmost to start that process rolling. And they will be doing everything in their power to make sure it keeps rolling, including trying to mandate people to have a medical treatment which will very likely lead directly to their own death within a period of 4 to 5 years, and very likely also could lead to their complete sterilization so that they are unable to have any children whatsoever. Add to that the destruction of the economy, the destruction of the fabric of society, the setting people against each other, the divide and conquer. It's all gloomy, it's all negative. We know, boys and girls, but the upside is it is not yet too late if we would just stand the fuck up and say no to all of this fucking nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to expect that because they have been successfully breeding a cattle mentality in most people for a long time now. And to expect most people to react, just like if you preach civil disobedience, you are seen as some kind of weird
radical.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. Yeah. That's why I'm saying that the thing that they can't stop is they can't stop billions of people peacefully basically pushing them out of the way and saying we're not going to follow your orders. They can't do that. I mean, even the British understood they couldn't actually slaughter, millions and millions in India. They had to basically move out of there. As at one point when you've got millions and millions of people that turn up on the street and say we're not going to follow anything, What are you going to do? Slaughter them? It's not going to happen.
Well, in fact, what the British did, they couldn't even be bothered to wipe out 10 to 15,000 Maoris. They signed a treaty with them instead, and then they set them against each other.
Exactly. Divide and rule.
To us. I'll tell you what they did. What they did is they went to one Maori chieftain, the Governor General, and said, now listen, we have these things that your fellow Maori over there, over the other side of the hill there, they don't have these things. We call this a musket. A musket. It's a boom boom stick. We pull this thing here and it goes click, boof, and it fires this lead ball, and it, look what we can do with this bottle on a shelf or something. Tell you what, you take these boom boom sticks, you go over the hill there to your fellow Maori tribe that you don't get along with anyway because you never have, shoot them all with the boom boom sticks. You can eat them if you like, because that's how you consume their mana, their
spirit power,
all of that, and that's also how you take over their rights to their rangatiratanga. You actually take over their land by destroying their warriors and eating them, taking their women for your own, usually killing the children or enslaving them, that kind of stuff. Come back when you've done that and you've taken over their bit of land that you actually don't need because you've got one here already. And then, tell you what, we'll give you some more muskets and blankets and you sign that over to us. We'll own that from then on in. That'll be Crown land, and jobs are good.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, they did that in Canada. They did that, in a number of places where they actually armed certain groups, and they were together with the different European powers that were fighting.
And again, Harry, if
it's been done plenty of times in history. So
if in polite New Zealand conversation I mention the fact that the Maori used to eat each other, my God, the kickback I get from that is, how dare you? You go to any.
If you go all the way back to even Europeans, go back, they did some of that as well.
Exactly. Look,
in parts of ancient Greece that happened as well. Every single part of the world that's actually happened.
Yeah. Go to any Maori welcoming ceremony when one group of Maori go to the marae house of the other group of Maori, and they're welcomed onto the marae, and etc. etc. If one of those groups of Maoris was known at any point in history to have conquered any faction of the other group and thus consumed some of their mana and taken it, you will see them going like this to each other. And this is, I am picking your ancestors out of my teeth. That's what this is.
That's an insult.
It is. It's a challenge. I ate your granny, or my grandfather ate your granny.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, look. There's a lot of that sort of stuff. It's basically, as I said, the woke society today is unable to cope, or with the reality of the human condition and things that we've done to each other historically. It's just a reality. Yeah. That's what we've done. I mean, I remind people that topography rules and determines, even if you take a look, most civilizations move latitudinally. Whenever you get societies that basically, or continents which are, longitudinally, you don't see as big empires. Why? Because it's very hard to move culture, animal species, plant species, and all that between those different temperature sort of zones. And that's why it's really hard in Africa, in the Americas, to build big empires. They were concentrated in certain parts. It's the same thing around. But Eurasia, really easy to move across. All animals, all things, all technologies, very easy. And that's why those were the strongest, the biggest areas where there was more cultural exchange that allowed more rapid development of those cultures compared to other parts of the world. That's the only reason, you know. I mean, these are the sort of topographical effects on cultural exchange between different parts of the world, and an effect, and also the ability to create surpluses within those environments, those temperate zones, much better than some others. So it's simple as that. It's not complicated to understand why it happened, but the problem is we need to play this woke idea that everything was the same everywhere and all that, and we just ignore topography, culture, the way it evolved differently in different parts of the world, all these things, because you know, we don't want to seem different, or, you know, that we should cherish, we should celebrate, you know, the richness of the human species, what we've been able to achieve in different parts of the world, and also the limitations that our environment created to us, to limit us from going further. You look at different parts of the world, certain technologies developed, and then they didn't go any further. Why? Because there were certain environmental constraints that prevented that. And so there's nothing, you know, we need to celebrate all of humanity's sort of ethnological, sort of cultural sort of achievements and all that. But the problem is we have this sort of woke behavior that, you know, certain things we don't want to talk about. The reality is there were some very nasty things that we did. I mean, the Spartans, were really into eugenics. They killed their own kids, you know. They were nasty. You know, they actually killed their own kids because they were in this sort of eugenics sort of ideology that only perfect men warriors were allowed to survive, and any kid that seemed to have some disability or whatever was just knocked off. You know, so that, you know, it's, if you say that to a Greek in Greece and tell them that, they'll say, "Yeah, we know that." You know, I don't agree with that, but that was what happened in our history in the past. You don't take offense to it. But it seems like in the English-speaking world, you know, these sort of things, people, when they look at their own ancestors and stuff like that and sort of behaviors, they take offense when, you know, that's what your ancestors did. You know, just get over it. You know, what's wrong with you, you know? But it has nothing to do with what you are today or your descendants and all that, but that's where you come from. That's what your ancestors did. Exactly. You know, so it's just really sort of crazy sort of stuff that we have to put up with, where it's the same thing with basically with, you know, males and females. There are only two sexes as far as biology know. But, you know, we have to basically ignore biology, ignore empirical evidence of the chromosomes that differentiate women and men, and just ignore that and just say that doesn't exist, you know. So we have a world today where we don't want to accept any cultural stuff that is actually uncomfortable, or any biological information or stuff like that that's uncomfortable. And it's a crazy world we live in.
It is. Now,
It is.
lambs. The virus is not non-existent.
Does exist.
It exists. There is no question it exists, lambs. What the virus is not is of any concern or any threat to humanity in any way. That's what they've got wrong. Not its existence.
Yeah.
Its existence.
It's not going to wipe us out.
Anyone who says this virus does not exist does not know what they are talking about.
Exactly.
It does. Absolutely, it exists, but it does not pose a threat to humanity in any way, shape, or form. The reaction is what's inappropriate here.
So, you know, you would agree with me, Bart, that basically a lot of some of these frail people that are actually slightly, you know, dying when they do take the actual vaccine is basically because they get a cytokine storm effect, no different than they would, because it actually is, it replicates that mRNA type. It replicates very similar to a virus, creating the conditions for a cytokine storm, and that's what's killing them. Whether they had got the virus or they take the vaccine that creates this cytokine storm effect because of their low vitamin D status. And it's the thing, the big elephant in the room is basically that we don't need for respiratory infections, we really just need to have a better vitamin D status. And we need to stop this slip, slop, slap of chemicals on our skin. And we need to basically put these old people out in a sunroom or out in the open to enjoy the sun and actually improve their vitamin D status. As the video that I did, the recent one on vitamin D status, you know, that the sort of nonsense about, you know, testosterone in older people and all that. I mean, those people in that second study were basically in a nursing home, and they were severely, they even said it, they were severely vitamin D deficient. How are these people supposed to have natural protection to protect themselves? When you go back to the 30s and 40s and all that, doctors used to put them out in the sun. You know, it was the way to basically heal them. The sun is so healing, vitamin D.
Exactly.
That just drives me up the wall.
Let me jump in there, Harry, because Lambs is claiming that I'm talking bullshit here. Lambs, get fucked. I'm absolutely not talking bullshit. I know what I'm fucking talking about, son. Flu hasn't gone any fucking where. Okay, what's happening is there are a whole bunch of people, thousands and thousands of people being diagnosed as having been infected with COVID-19 who have not been infected with COVID-19. That doesn't mean COVID-19 does not exist, you fucking idiot. Okay?
Can I just say one thing that, to clarify that? The actual you know, it's a coronavirus. COVID, like the flu, are coronaviruses. What happens is these PCR tests, they do them multiple times over and over again, that process, where they're so sensitive, what happens is they are picking up all these different other coronavirus and actually being misclassified as a consequence. Yeah. That's what's happening. It's not that the flu's not there. It's not that other colds are not there. I've had a couple of colds, which I've, nipped in the bud very quickly because, just taking a bit of vitamin D supplementation, as I said, 2 weeks ago, I took a high dose for 2 days, completely cleared out. And that's just, there's plenty, there's millions and millions of viruses out there. As long as they've got receptors that can go into your cell and replicate, they can basically, create viral colds and stuff like that. If you've got good vitamin D status, you don't have to worry about it. Clears it out. It's pretty well. You're eating a species-appropriate diet, getting enough zinc. That helps as well. So, we don't have to worry about it. But the problem is because of the sensitivity of the test, they are basically picking up viral colds, flus, and corona. All these and lumping them all into one because they're all corona type, and so their test is the problem. Mm-hmm. And this is why people are being misdiagnosed and basically ending up in concentration camp like in New Zealand without something lethal that would kill them. And they are basically just being incarcerated with potentially having something like the flu or having something like another cold thing that won't really affect them in any serious way. But the test said they've got it, or they've got a corona of some sort. That's good enough for them. You're in the lockup. That's the problem where we're getting at. That's what we're criticizing. We're criticizing the misuse of the test and the misuse of the policy response.
Yeah. And in short, if you want to take a shot at me, Lambs, you better get up much fucking earlier in the morning than that, because that was piss poor. I know what I'm fucking talking about. How dare you? Next.
Anyway, we will move on. We will move on from all that. I'm going to move further down because there's a lot of things that I've sort of missed. So I've got, anyway, what's this one? From Dylan, asked Hench about, okay.
He said on my live
he had no idea.
Exact same thing.
Oh, did he? Okay. Yeah. Well, well, none of the vegetards, the vegetards don't really know about the N15. Very few of them. There are probably some vegetarded academics that know, and they come up with certain spurious arguments that the tests weren't done properly, or this one. I mean, all of them, the thousands the hundreds that have been done around the world. Are you kidding me? They find one or two. It's the old thing. I'll find one or two that are problematic, not well done, and I'll basically make an argument around that. It's nothing new. But the majority of people like a lot of the YouTubers like Hench Richard and all that, they got no idea about N15. They probably don't even know what it means. If you say N15, they're probably looking at you dazed. Remember, the brain fog as well doesn't really help with them. I mean, Richard in particular, he falls, you know, if he has too many donuts, he's out, and then he shits himself. So, I mean, don't expect you know, some sort of logical sort of reply from people like that in that sort of state of affairs.
Yeah.
Anyway, move a bit further down. Well, if you need to do that, go and see your mate Bart, and he'll sort you out.
Yes, I will. I'll tell you what. I'll give you the link address right now.
Oh, how nice of you, Sky! How nice of you. Oh,
that's awesome.
You're so loving.
Yeah.
Are you going to be spanking me while you're doing that? You know, sort of having a spanking type video session. Is it how bad are you going to be, girl? How bad are you going to be?
All right.
Oh,
okay.
Well, you got to excite them. You got to excite them somehow. I'll just pin that message to the top there. So
very good. Very good. Hopefully, I've spelled it right this time.
Well,
yeah, that looks good. That looks good.
Does it? Let me just see. Does it work?
Yep, it did. It says pinned by Harry.
Yep.
No, I'm just making sure that it actually redirects. Yes, it does redirect.
Oh, very good.
Because you may have not typed it. Last time you didn't type it, and it actually went to, you know, some sort of, you know, 404, which is basically going nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I actually have a question to you, gentlemen. What would you say about this idea that milk can harm your iron absorption?
It can have an effect. It does have an effect, but it's not as pronounced as most people make out. Because if that was the case, the Messiah that consume about 4.4 litres on average of milk a day would have massive iron deficiency otherwise. Because milk is very low in iron. We've actually talked about that. We actually did a video. I did a collaboration with Bart some time ago, showing all the deficiencies and what milk is good for and what it isn't. So they also eat a lot of meat and organ meats and stuff like that. They get more than enough. If you're having a species appropriate diet and not a problem, most of the actual research was done on people who are vegetarians who do not eat sufficient stuff. So basically, is it the vegetarian diet in general? You know? So do you know what I'm getting at? It's nonsense, because other people that actually have mixed diets, like SAD diets, that also consume milk, don't seem to have this problem. But only the vegetarian community seem to have this problem. Now, they're accusing that it's too much milk, that you should probably have more other things like eggs and other sort of cheeses and things like that, and yogurts that are going to be less problem compared to milk. I think that's the sort of angle that they're pushing, that milk's the problem. It's the old milk bashing thing that has been happening for some time. So, you know, I think it's more the vegetarian diet. And until they actually can do a species appropriate, you know, like populations that consume more animal rich diets and demonstrate that it is a problem. Yeah. But I don't think there is a real problem there. It's just sort of you know, people looking at really poor studies and then making a reductionist argument. You know, what do you think, Bart?
Yeah, it's the lack of any actual proper controlled science to underpin any of these decisions as usual. It's just anecdotes, you see. There's no actual evidence. Anecdotes is all we've got, you see. And that leads people to make all sorts of ridiculous claims and comments.
Yeah, it's basically all these sort of things.
I'm not for dairy, and I'm not against dairy. I think, you know, there are people that...
You're lactose intolerant.
Well, I am, but I still enjoy cream and butter and those kind of things.
And cheese.
And cheese, yeah. Not so much cheese, but I do consume cheese. Others swear by dairy, others swear by raw dairy specifically, and I just think, fine, you know, if it works for you, then then go hard, and that's fine. I really seriously doubt that dairy would have a negative impact on iron status. I really do. I can't see a mechanism by which that could work.
Neither can I.
Yeah, because unlike Lambs, who is still fucking going, by the way, in the chat there, I actually have a logical mind and can put two concepts together and put some logic in between them and make some fucking sense of what I'm saying before I open my stupid fucking mouth and say it, Lambs. You know. Christ.
Yes. Fair enough.
Yeah.
You're exasperated.
There's one in every group, isn't there? There's one in every group.
There is.
You know, basically, it's an opportunity to say less and to listen more and maybe to learn something from someone who actually knows what they're talking about. And you have three people here, Lambs, in the panel, who are largely knowledgeable, and a great number of people in the chat who are also largely knowledgeable, who are trying to set you on the right path, and you're still behaving like an absolute fucktard. Stop it, basically. Yeah.
On this one, Kitty, I would say, look, in terms of the when you've basically the reason why those sort of droplets that it will come viral droplets that will come out of your mouth in winter, they will basically be contained. What moisture does, like even in the tropics, it actually breaks that outer membrane and it actually makes it less potentially problematic. It doesn't eliminate all those sort of droplets, but it does reduce them slightly. So that moist type thing in a mask in winter would actually reduce that amount, but the downside is, as you said, you would get more bacterial that potentially could come back into your respiratory system as a secondary infection type thing, especially a lot of people that are using masks continuously, the same masks, they're not washing them, they're not getting rid of them, like disposable sort of stuff like a lot of medical people do, because they realize that is a potential risk. They get rid of them. They have all these sort of fabric ones that tend to hold on to more of this sort of bacterial load. And they also have sort of shedding from their skin. They will have shedding from their skin, flaking off skin, which basically will lodge into those masks on the inner side. And that also will provide a breeding ground for the bacteria to grow and populate. So it's a problem when people misuse a lot of this sort of stuff as well. So let alone there are whole lot of other issues related to masks, but that's just one of them that I can think of. I don't know whether Bart can think of anything else. I don't see the value of them.
No. The best analogy for masks in terms of preventing viral infection is that it's much like trying to stop a swarm of mosquitoes with a chain link fence.
Basically, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So two chain link fences, three chain link fences are not going to stop any more mosquitoes than one.
Yeah. If you're in an indoor environment with a lot of people that it's well ventilated, not a problem. If it's not well ventilated, you may get a slightly higher viral load from somebody infected if you're not wearing a mask. But how much is hard to say, and it depends on. They would have to be very close to you as well when they sneezed. So at a distance, so unless somebody, the only time you would get. And that would be limited protection anyway, but you'd get a bit in terms of viral load. But you know what actually showed? I actually pinned on my first COVID video. Somebody recently asked me, and I actually pointed her back to my first video, and I said, check what I pinned there. And I said about gargling. The reason why in Vietnam, they have a national sort of thing over there, they gargle a lot. Wasn't the masks, because a lot of the other societies there that had masks had very high rates. But like Indonesia, for instance. But areas like Vietnam had very low. You know why? They gargled. It's a national thing. They were encouraged to nationally, everybody to gargle 3 to 4 times a day. What it does is it takes out the viral load out of your respiratory, so it reduces. You're out in the sun as well, so your mucosal layers are, the tight junctions are much more tighter because of the vitamin D. And at the same time, you're actually reducing the viral load going in. So you're going to be basically getting a much lower level. This is why they had in a population which is, I can't remember how much of Vietnam's population, well over 50 million. They had very few deaths, very low deaths, and probably achieved herd immunity for the simple fact that they were basically gargling. And gargling does clear out a lot of the viral load in the respiratory system. So it's a thing that I encouraged from the beginning, and it's a traditional thing that people used to do, you know, around the world. You know, they used to gargle with salt or water or whatever for years, and it was one way of basically, especially the winter months, of reducing the sort of viral load that got into your respiratory system. It's things that we've forgotten or lost, you know, those sort of things that your mum used to tell you to do and stuff like that, you know. So, or basically, you know, sort of the old thing with you know, hot water sort of and covering your head and stuff like that, all this sort of to clear out your sinuses. All these are traditional things that people used to do to clear out. Clearing out your sinuses also clears out some of the viral load in those sinuses, you know. So there's a lot of things that we used to do in the past that we don't do anymore, you know, because now we've got medicines. We can take over-the-counter medicines and crap and stuff like that, you know, and stop that infection, because we don't want the body to actually heal itself. We want to prolong our illness, you know. That's the problem. We've basically over-medicalized, and we've lost some of our both food and sort of traditional sort of, you know, approaches to protecting ourselves. It's all that, you know, we've really lost our way on a lot of fronts.
I've had some flashbacks to when I was a kid and I had a really bad sore throat, and my mom made me gargle like vinegar and salt. But it did help.
Yeah, look, I used to, Mum used to get me to gargle salt as well, you know, sea salt. So yeah, I did that as well, and I can tell you that you know, it actually also reduced the sort of severity of like respiratory infections or secondary infections. So you didn't have to go and get an antibiotic, you know. So nowadays, I hear sometimes some kids of some of my co-workers, the amount of antibiotics some of these kids have had in early age, constantly, oh, it's got a cold, there's another antibiotic. It's a virus, you know. There are some traditional methods you can actually clear out their sinuses and all that. It's just, yeah, it goes on and on and on and on and on. It's just crazy, the sort of stuff that we're doing nowadays. Yeah, what can I say? Anyway, if you guys check out Adapt 2030, David's talk about smart
particles.
Okay. Do you know much about this guy or this sort of thing?
Yeah, there's talk about putting these nanoparticles in the jab that they can basically scan and use for all sorts of tracking purposes and that. And
I don't believe that. That's garbage. That's technology. I come from an IT background, and I know a lot about the technology, and we're not there yet.
Yeah,
we probably will get there at some point, but we're not there yet. You know,
no.
You know, there is certain sort of nanoscale effects and sort of where you've got basically sort of the magnetic sort of fields that can be generated and sort of bleeding in that can actually affect. Our sort of semiconductor technology is really not there yet, believe me. And lithographic methods of basically creating these things is not there yet. So no, I don't believe in any of that. I think it's just basically this social political stuff that's actually happening. And, you know, and even the vaccine, you know, yes, okay, some of the stuff like the traditional, like the Noravax one, is probably going to update your template. It's like going to give you a small load, like you would get from a small load of the actual virus itself, and give you some immunity in that regard. But the reality is, it's not that. It's really the politics behind all this. The politics is basically, you must conform, you must follow our edicts, you must take this, take that, or whatever. It's this sort of control method.
Yes.
Technology. Yeah. Technology, we're not there yet. That's sort of, you know, really getting into, you know, maybe in 100, 200 years, we may get to that sort of level of technology, and then we can put things into our bodies to basically scan and do all sorts of things or kill things or, little nanobots and all that. But that miniaturization, there's also, in terms of Moore's law, in terms of miniaturization, we don't even know whether we can do that with the current, when it comes to the current lithographic technology, which is what they use for silicon-based technology. No. Whether we can actually build biological type computing, like, that's a different technology, and that's probably a lot of years ahead, maybe 100, maybe, at the most, at the earliest, maybe 50 years, so we're talking about, 2070 before something like that may be practical. So it's a long way out, guys, in that regard, when you look at the technology worldwide and all that. They don't need to do that. They've got cameras all over the place. They've got AIs that can monitor people, facial recognition, all sorts of things to monitor and know where you are or where you're going and all that sort of stuff. That's what they're using. That's their current capacity, and that's what they're using. So you have to be cognizant that when you see basically in your communities more and more cameras like they do in China, where they're having these social credits and all this sort of stuff starts emerging, that's when you need to really be concerned, because that's where they're pushing the whole thing. You can already see it from now. They are actually saying, are you sort of the sort of, we've got a commercial here in Tasmania, and it's basically the sort of thing, this guy going around and say, oh, you following the rules and all that. Some guy sort of sneezes and the lady says, go home, tells this old fella, you're a menace, these sort of things. So we've already got this sort of propaganda trying to tell us how to behave as good citizens. So that's really what's happening at the moment. This sort of technology is beyond us at this stage, but that's what's happening at the moment. And it's, people have grown up a comfortable middle-class life without a lot of problems. They haven't seen warfare for the last 70 years in the most advanced societies. So, they've become very comfortable in not really having the very conservative in nature humans have become. Even the people that say that they are politically on one side, left or whatever, is irrelevant. When it comes to social behavior, they've become very much conservative in the way that they just accept the society as it is and don't want to make waves. It's like a lot of the middle class say, I've got too much to lose. And that's the thing, they've got their mortgage, they've got their debts, they've got this, they've got all their, they've been conditioned to want more consumer items, and all this sort of stuff is the way they live. They've created such interdependencies with the system that they feel trapped, that they have to go with the system because it gives them all these benefits. And if they went against it, they would lose everything, So they've been really well, the consumer revolution, or the post-1950s sort of consumerist advertising culture that was initiated has really worked its marvels as controlling mechanisms in most of the developed societies. And now we're at the pinnacle of that. We're at the stage where they are now trying to implement more control methods because they can see their system is unraveling in terms of debt, in terms of instability, zombie banks, zombie businesses, and all that, a lot of problems. So now they're trying to manage the sort of the you could say that decline that's happening. It's like in Japan, they're creating, the central bank there is just buying up all the bonds. At the end of the day, the central bank in Japan will own everything in terms of they're crowding out everybody in the bond market. So basically, they can do a reset in the future and prevent the system from going under. So what they're doing is they're just screwing the older people who are holding a lot of these sort of things and trashing their sort of their savings. So it's an intergenerational transfer, and the people in the know, who are the wealthy people, are the ones that the children of these people are not going to inherit as much, and the wealthy are basically going to concentrate more, and the banks and the government will be able to do their reset. So without a lot of dislocation the way they view it. Whether they are successful or not, that's another point. But that's the thinking. There's a lot of different programs that are being played out there, others in the European Union, others in North America and other parts of the world, and people trying different methods of reset. So this has been happening for some time. It's not something new. It's just now on steroids. That's the difference. And that's what's frightening, that it is on steroids. And they are moving very rapidly to curtail our rights and our ability to basically, sort of be able to think independently anymore. If you notice, even people I've noticed even in my work environment or other people around me, when I actually make a comment different to the narrative, I sort of get a lot of pushback, which I never did in the past. I really get strange looks, and people really sort of like, you can't believe that, Harry, or how can you I mean, I really get sort of nasty looks, which I never got in the past. It's quite disturbing in that regard. I mean, you guys have probably experienced similar things.
Almost every time I open my mouth, Harry, someone says, "I can't believe you said that," or that you believe that. It's quite common that I hear people reacting to me that way.
Well, I can understand them. You're a bigot,
Exactly.
I mean,
with that in mind, I have to bigot off and go and do some bigoty stuff.
You do that.
Thanks for the invite. I've had fun. I've enjoyed a bit of backwards and forwards and a bit of abusing people. It's always good fun, Harry, to tell someone to get fun. Always good fun. See you next time. Basically, be good.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you
Thanks
can't
for
be
dropping
good,
in.
Not at all, my pleasure. And make sure that all of you fuckers get across to the Cerule link, which is tagged at the top of the chat there. Get yourself some of the fine sponsors product, because it really is the duck-billed platypus's ass.
Anyway, see you, mate.
All right.
Thanks for being here. And regards to Pim.
Indeed, I'll do that presently.
And also just a plug for Pim as well. She's been doing I don't need to, but I've actually been following her videos lately on her diabetes protocols and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I've been and I encourage other people to please share those on your social media. I've been doing it on Facebook, a lot of that sort of stuff. And, other people, please share that, because we need to get the message out that, because you've got a lot of people, you've coming to me here and saying, "Oh, my father's on a sad diet, my mother's on a sad diet, this person's on a sad diet, they've got diabetes, they've got these conditions." I can give you an answer about certain things like Bart or Lukey, but the reality is you really need somebody to coach that person in your family, because they need to basically commit themselves to a program to basically improve their health. It's not going to happen automatically. And you may be too close to that person and they're not going to listen to you, or they may, it's hard for a child or for a sibling or whatever to tell another sibling or another child or whatever what to do. It's difficult. You're going to get pushback. It's just the reality of things. Yeah. Much easier to get an independent person to deal with that. And Pim's really good at this sort of stuff. So,
And she almost never tells anyone to get fucked unless it's me.
Understandable.
Yeah, chalk and cheese. I'm bad cop. She's good cop. All right, boys and girls. See you later. Good day.
See you, mate.
Stay well, Bart.
Okay, let's move on. Heavy cream. Look, most people don't have an issue with heavy cream or certain cheeses and stuff like that. I usually say if you're going to actually have any cheese, have brie, camembert. If you're basically trying to lose weight, go for the more protein-heavy camembert. If you're just weight stable and stuff like that, or you're only into very low levels, go for brie, which is more fattier. Because you have to bring down some level when you're trying to lose weight, because you want to use more of your adipose tissue. Because if you're putting stuff in, you're just going to use the stuff that's coming in. So it sort of has to be tempered back, and more protein is the way to go when you're trying to lose weight. But if you're not trying to lose weight, then look at brie. It's also, these both camembert and brie are MK4 only when it comes to K2. So they've got none of the other menaquinones. So you get the best. You don't need to do any conversions, which is great. And that's pretty much it. And, you know, most people, because there's no the one that I actually get one down here in Tasmania, which is use the Ashgrove one quite a bit, and that basically also has so little sugar. It's just very high. Doesn't have a lot of protein. Doesn't have a next to negligible amount. It's just mainly a lot of fat. It's something like 48%. It's really just, the rest is water, so it's very high as a fat, a fatty type. But, you know, and that is really nice heavy cream as well. So yeah, that usually is for people that have got issues with casein or stuff like that. It's the best way to go. Yeah, I agree, Zakia.
Can you believe I've never tried raw cream before?
Haven't you?
I've only ever had access to pasteurized dairy.
Well, this one that I spoke about is pasteurized, but I have actually tried raw cream, but it's really hard to get in Tasmania unless you know certain people. So you can only get it occasionally, which is the biggest problem.
I can't get
I should not say more. I should not say any more.
Yes,
on that
I can't talk too much about it as well.
Yeah, because I suspect the laws in your country are just as bad.
Yeah.
Yes. The only thing that I can get is the milk, which is basically because it goes through that machine and it's been accepted. But any other sort of stuff, I mean, I've been able to access from certain parts in the past, but it's, you know, it's problematic. Let's put it that way. The last time I consumed a lot of raw dairy was in Greece when I was a youngster in the 70s and early 80s because I had access to it. My father's side, they had, you know, sheep, goats and all that, and we had access to raw dairy, shitloads of it. So
it's funny because I feel like I was born a little bit too late because I was already born in this after the time where everyone got brainwashed about, oh, you have to boil your milk and stuff like that, or you are going to die or get bovine tuberculosis or whatever. But before that, like my great grandparents, no one boiled their milk; they had it raw. No one did that.
Yep. I don't know who's saying, is there any truth on vitamin D supplements not having any effect? I can't find one study that would actually show that. Every single study, when they've given people high doses of vitamin D, their blood levels go up.
Yeah,
so if basically the supplements had no effect, those studies would show that it had no effect, and we would not bother be using vitamin D supplements. So, nope. The only difference is that there are two issues with high doses of vitamin D in terms of eating it. Consuming it, like swallowing it as a supplement. When you're getting it in small amounts from the food, it's not a problem. When you're getting it from the sun, you're basically also, it's slowly being released into the bloodstream based on demand driven so it hits the sun, gets converted, because it's cholesterol that basically just has one part just altered and basically gets converted. So it's, yeah, the cholesterol molecule gets converted and then that creates the vitamin D. Now, your body will release that from your tissue into the bloodstream based on how much you need. And it will also store some of it as well. So that's what's happening. But when you take it as a supplement, you get a big load. But even then, the body will convert a lot of it into basically 97% of it into 25-OHD via the liver. So it'll actually convert the majority of it. You only end up with about 3% free cholesterol. 3%, that's it. No more. Now, why do you want a bigger dose? Like when you're out in the sun, you're getting 10,000 to 20,000 IUs. Why do you want a bigger dose sometimes, especially in the winter? because you want that free cholesterol. Our biggest problem is we've got a lot of organs. We've got the breast tissue, we've got prostate, we've got a lot of tissues which tend to have the type of the type of characteristics that tend to basically have stronger growth characteristics, is a way of saying it, to make it very simple so it's understandable. Vitamin D, there are enzymes in those tissues, and those enzymes, what they do is they regulate and control cell proliferation. So vitamin D is the major one. The minor one is retinol in these enzymes. But the key cofactor is vitamin D. So if you don't have enough vitamin D, you can't control cell differentiation and growth in these organs. And that is where long-term, where prostate problems come from. Same thing with breast problems for women. This is where they come from. So your genes are not your destiny.
Wow.
But if you can control those enzymatic pathways that can regulate the cell proliferation of tissue which has a tendency to proliferate, that's what the prostate has, and so does the breast tissue, especially when, actually these enzymes get suppressed slightly at the time when the mother is pregnant and her breasts grow quite a bit at the time, again, to be able to store more milk for that purpose for the child and all that. So, there are reasons, and vitamin D actually is quite good. So it will allow that tissue when a mother's pregnant to increase, and will also, when the mother is no longer pregnant, or, the child is off weaning, so, you don't need to produce any more breast milk, it will basically down-regulate that, those growth pathways. And these enzymes control that process. And that's why it's important that we basically get sufficient, levels. Best to get it from the sun, because the issue that I see when you're actually consuming it is you can pour more calcium in. And if you don't have enough, basically, MK4 there, it can be a problem. So that's an issue. Now, people are going to say, the Maasai consume shitloads of milk. Yes, but they're getting it from the sun, their vitamin D, which isn't controlled. It's not like a massive bolus of vitamin D, like 10,000 IUs just hitting the system, bang, like that. It's a very small amount over time that gets slowly released into the bloodstream. So it's a very different thing, So I would say that I usually would consume it on an empty stomach. And that's the reason why I get the vitamin D with basically, to have MCT or extra virgin olive oil in it to be able to provide the fats. It's a fat-soluble vitamin, so be able to get some in. And I usually have a bit of cream as well. So on an empty stomach, I'll have a bit of cream with it. So I just want the fat, nothing else to take in. And I don't want calcium, too much calcium and stuff like that. I just want basically so it gets in, and then the body will basically store some of it in the fat adipose tissue, some in the liver, some in other, it'll actually distribute around peripheral tissue around the body. And so that's a better way of actually doing it. And that's only in times when you don't have access to the sun. You may be in a very cold climate and you may have restricted, and you may not have access to the traditional foods like cod liver oil, quality cod liver oil that is, or can't afford it, or have access to things like the certain foods, like a lot of the, seafood that basically in the colder climates that have basically got a lot of vitamin D in them as well, to get enough to basically, as your winter levels decline, they don't decline too severely. And if you're in those cold climates, it means you've got to be in the sun to build up your levels of vitamin D to very high levels through the summer months, and early autumn and late and late spring. So you've got the reserves, you've got the levels. So when you do, those levels do decline in winter months, they decline by very little in comparison. You may go from having 50 plus nanograms down to about 30 odd, 35, or somewhere there. That's still good. Remember, over 28 or whatever, over the into the 30s and onwards, you still get good levels of support for testosterone and a whole lot of other functions of the endocrine system and many other functions around the body. It's only, and that's how our ancestors would have sort of cycled in the temperate climates in that way, in the colder and the colder climates. The problem is we put too much clothing on in summer, and we stay indoors for far too many hours. And if you're dark-skinned and you're in those sort of countries as an immigrant, you're really in trouble. I can't see an alternative for those people with their current lifestyle without supplementing. So people in North America, people in Europe, in different parts of the world that have darker skin, I think they should be supplementing. Unfortunately, it's really hard to get it enough from the sun, because you need to be out there 6 times longer in terms of hours. Too many hours. People are not going to do it. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So it's a problem for a lot of populations, and the answer is going to be very different because of those different circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
That's not too bad. If it is lightly, that's much better.
We used to have over here what was called type C milk, which was unhomogenized and just lightly pasteurized, but you don't see it anymore. Like, it's really hard to come by because, for your own safety, we are phasing out type C milk.
Okay. Yeah. Look, it's sort of, it's strange around the world. A lot of where small scale farmers are just being obliterated around the world. It's happening. I mean, you've probably noticed it in Brazil, how much soy agriculture has come in and literally obliterated a lot of the traditional small farmers.
This is something I was talking to my dad about this. Like, some people will paint their houses, and there is this shade of white that is slightly yellow. That's called cream, and people don't know why it's called cream, because if you buy cream at the store, it is white. But just one generation ago, when my dad was a youngster, he had raw cream from the farms nearby, and it was actually a cream color. But no one knows about this anymore. Yeah,
that yellowy type.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe. Look, it's really, it's, things have been diluted. Things have been, it's really bad nowadays. Because what they do is they deliberately dilute them. They put water in them. They do all sorts of nasty things. In some countries, they even put oils, like seed oils, in them.
Jesus.
I know. Yeah, look, they sell them as cheap creams.
You know what's funny here? There's a rather interesting story. When my dad, when he was about my age, at his time, he had backyard chickens in his home. He ate like dozens and dozens of raw eggs and never got sick. You know what actually made him sick? He started buying ultra pasteurized milk from the store, and one day he left it out, forgot about it, left it out of the fridge. He accidentally drank it, and he got sick beyond belief. And the funny thing is, he told me, it is so weird that you buy something that is thermally treated, supposedly to be safer, but raw milk, it doesn't really spoil. It takes a long time.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the advantage of raw milk, and the beneficial bacteria in there actually are quite protective, because they actually increase the acid environment, and so they actually keep the pathogens at bay within that milk. That's the whole thing. The problem is then we sort of pasteurize and do all these sort of modifications, and then any bacteria that comes in, it's got a pathogenic. It's got a free reign to proliferate,
Exactly.
with great ease, and let alone a lot of the actual now milks are have less fat, more lactose, more sugar in there, which helps these these pathogenic bacteria get even a bigger foothold, and grow even more, proliferate to such a level where it can create problems. And I've actually heard the same thing from other people that have actually said that it was leaving pasteurized milk out that they actually ended up,
But yeah, it is.
Look, when it comes to heavy unhomogenized, so I don't know Zakia, I don't really know this brand of heavy cream. And I suspect it's a really good quality type, more traditionally made, and that's probably why it's not causing any issues whatsoever. So because traditional, the more closer you are to things that don't have garbage in them, the closer they are to the original sort of the raw milk in that regard, source in that they less problematic. People used to consume shitloads in the past in Europe, large, as a young child. I mean, I remember drinking a lot. Nobody had any issues. People in the past didn't have issues. It's only after our so-called future food revolution that actually brought in a lot of crap into the diet, emulsifiers and all sorts of things, because unless you actually destroy your gut lining to get these proteins, or you don't have enough stomach acidity because you're eating too much crap and not generating enough stomach acid and really dysregulating, you end up having too many of these refined carbohydrates that tend to grow H. pylori, candida, and a number of other things, and they will populate in your stomach. And as they populate, they also have a tendency of doing another thing, which is suppressing your stomach acid. So then you can't eliminate things, so that things don't break down properly. They don't break down to their basic amino acids. Some of those proteins still flow into your gut. Then you've got a leaky gut. They end up in your bloodstream, creating reactivity and autoimmunity. It's just generally the modern diet, the emulsifiers, the refined sugars and all that, they are basically causing all these things synergistically, and then creating this sort of nexus where, your gallbladder doesn't work properly, because you're not eating enough animal products to basically, because either use it or lose it. Not enough animal products, you're doing a low-fat diet or a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet for a long period of time. What happens is your system, you're basically sort of down-regulates, in that regard, and you actually lose that capacity to basically produce good enough levels of bile. And so if you're not releasing it, it'll actually build up there and it will solidify, harden. That's how you get stones and sludge and all that sort of stuff. And then that doesn't work properly to basically absorb things properly. So most people, when they get to a carnivore diet, they've got a lot of problems. And I've said people need to basically use things like natural emulsifiers for the bile, which is taurine. Now, the problem is, because they haven't been consuming a lot of taurine for a very long time, animal foods, to get the taurine, they will have much lower levels. A small amount. If they're younger, they're much safer. But if they're middle-aged, already their taurine, amount of that you basically produce will have gone down. The other thing that will have actually also stripped a lot of these, because it's a sulfur amino acid, the other thing that will also reduce that is oxalate. Oxalates tend to basically reduce sulfurs in the body. So you're losing sulfurs from oxalate, you're losing sulfurs from your bad diet, or you're not getting enough because you're not eating sulfur-rich animal foods. So you end up in a real bad situation. So in that case, then I do recommend supplementation of taurine and slowly moving to higher amounts, because you can basically slowly provide enough an MSM, so the MSM can be used to deal with the oxalates, and so you can leave the actual the taurine alone to deal with the other issues, which is, you know, the liver issues, the fibrotic tissue. It also breaks down fibrosis. I haven't done the video yet, but I will be doing a video on how to reverse, damaged liver. So that's another video. It combines a number of things, not only taurine, but, you know, that's an element in it as well. So, because a lot of people out there, some people are stating that once it gets that bad, the next port of call is basically surgery. I don't agree with that. It does take longer, this protocol, to actually reverse damaged liver, yes, but it's much better to basically reverse it like that rather than having your liver removed and then be put on medication for the rest of your life with somebody else's liver. That's not a solution. There's not enough people dying to provide healthy livers around for everyone, so not a solution, a liver transplant. So that's for another argument. Anyway, I've gone on a tangent. Better move on. Just putting 2 and 2. Yep. Anyway. Yeah. And Russians gargle when we're sick too. Yep. Look, at least my mum always tells me to. Yep, that's what people used to do in the past. You know, I used to as well. My mum used to tell me to do that as well. So it's something that we've been doing for a very long time. And it doesn't surprise me why the Vietnamese had such low death rates compared to many other populations that don't gargle. It was incredibly low. And you know what the actual so-called fucking experts said? Oh, it's all the mask wearing. Well, it didn't actually help people in Indonesia with all the mask wearing, did it? So if it was the masks, why weren't the people in Indonesia basically being protected by the masks? And why were only the Vietnamese? Or were the Vietnamese basically, God decided to basically make their masks much better? I mean, what a load of nonsense. Absolute nonsense. They actually have the same like surgical flimsy masks that the Indonesians were not even they weren't even basically N95, you know, the real high quality ones, the N95. These were just basic face masks, you know, that they've been wearing for years because of air pollution in their country and stuff like that. When they're on scooters and stuff like that, you see them wearing them. So give us a break. That's not the case. The case is that basically they gargled and they cleared out their respiratory system from both the possibility of secondary infections and also from having a big enough viral load to cause them problems. So they reduced the viral load, and by doing that, they had such a low death rate. So plus they do get out in the sun far more because they're not Muslims. So they actually get out in the sun for many hours. A lot of them are very rural and agricultural. Yes. There is, you know, industrialization is happening in Vietnam, but it's, you know, Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City in the south, but it's very slow. They're at the early stages of basically modernizing their economy. The majority of the population still lives on the land. So they work the land, they're out in the sun. So they've got the vitamin D status good. They've got the gargling, keeping the viral load down. That's what the magic was in terms of the success rate there. Yeah, gargling is definitely something, and I actually pinned that 11 months ago on my first COVID thing that I did back then, promoting vitamin D. And so basically that is where to go. I'll actually, hold on, I'll just bloody share it. Let me find it first of all. So I did create a playlist, didn't I? Yep. I'll go to the playlist. Okay, my channel. My playlist. Where is it? No. Ah, here it is. So it was the first one that was done in streamed live on the where I was looking at all the Wuhan sort of studies and stuff like that at the time. I'll just share that. So that was done. Oops. That was done back then.
Wow, I can see my old comments.
Yep. Just increasing it in size. So that was basically where I did about all the randomized stuff on gargling. That was 11 months ago. And that was basically that. Who actually did that? And I'd gone through about talking about gargling and spitting and stuff like that. And there was also this one that Dom had actually basically, oh, shit. Yeah, it's respond. Okay. And talked about MK4, how to balance that with your D stuff for lung respiratory infections and stuff like that. And yeah, Gardenia in Bloom, she actually asked me about that, and I actually put up a couple of things and about it, a few there. So basically, it was covered back then in terms of that sort of information. So if people want to go, they can go back there and actually look at the studies and stuff like that. We were just looking at, because they were looking at iodine, nasal sprays and all sorts of things. Since then, we've actually looked at iodine and all sorts of things, and we've got mixed bags. But the common theme that we've actually noticed, and that is there, is that basically, which is really good, that any gargling really helps. So in Vietnam, they actually promoted like the gargling of Listerine, which is, the mouthwash. So that's what they actually promoted. And the sales of that when the government recommended that went up by 83% within that early stage. I mean, they dramatically jumped. So anybody that says that, gargling didn't help, there's research that shows it does help. And then those dramatic jumps in Vietnam, very statistically correlate very well with basically, I see Lamps and Bart are still going toe to toe at it. Pretty much correlate very closely, the two together. So I would say that, I've, looking at the Vietnamese results, because they had none of the zinc stuff, none of the ionophores, none of the ivermectin, none of the other stuff. Their focus was basically gargling and vitamin D from the sun that they were getting naturally, and they had some of the lower, really low death rates. And obviously, the boffins out there said, "Oh, it's all the mask wearing," which is garbage. The two things that actually stand out are the vitamin D and the gargling. And I think I've been vindicated from that early warning what people should do to protect themselves and their families. The other stuff that I then started mentioning and all that was when more research was coming out. and we could actually start recommending other things like ionophores, like quercetin and zinc lozenges and stuff like that, and now ivermectin, and that's shown really good results as well. But with ivermectin, you've got to take the lower dose, which is the, that 3 milligram or whatever, and you want to be taking it like the first day, then the third day, not the second day. You want to take a gap between. You've got to have a gap between and then you have to wait until the six days have passed before you can take it again.
Okay, because that's good to know.
Yeah, because it bioaccumulates. A lot of people are not talking about this, but it does bioaccumulate, and you don't want, because there are some side effects that can be potentially. There's another side effect potentially for the brain in certain people. It's a very minor group of people that have got a specific genetic thing, but it's a very minor group. And most of those people would be, if they had that condition, they have certain other conditions, and their doctor would have told them about this and not to take anything like ivermectin. It's a bit like people who are, taking certain drugs and your doctor says, don't eat this, this, and this. They would be well aware of it. So it's not something that I need to give a warning in particular, but it's something just for completeness that I bring up in that regard. But for most people, it's not an issue because most people don't have this condition. It's a very rare condition in that regard. So
yeah. I actually noted this down because I do have some ivermectin stored around here.
Oh, bloody hell, mate. Gargling with nicotine.
This is your viewer,
Sam, you're an addict. You're an addict. You're an addict, mate. Thanks for the laugh.
This is...
Look, even water is good enough. Even water, plain water, showed a reduction in viral load.
Interesting.
That is funny. That is funny. Thanks for the laugh. I do appreciate the laugh. Yeah, saline solutions and all that. I'm going to be shortly calling it quits, because in about 5 minutes, I'm going to be pissing off out of here because I've got get to dad and all that. Jeff, what's talking about? My IBS symptoms that went away when I stopped being vegan. Yep, exactly. Yep, when you're on a species-appropriate diet, slowly but surely, a lot of those issues sort themselves out. And the more meat you consume, the more acidity you create in the stomach. And as long as you don't have an underlying condition like Candida, H. pylori, and stuff like that, the stomach usually resolves itself, and then the bile ducts, work well, and then everything sort of flows from there. So, it's only when people are too damaged that then they need some of these other protocols in that regard. So good to hear, mate. Exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Shell. Oh, look, yes. We had a pretty good session amongst all, so it was pretty good.
Indeed.
Not sure about what was mentioned in the Quran, so I'll move on. Look, we got into a long conversation with Bart and with a few other things that came up and all that, and things that had to be discussed about, what's happening in this crazy world at the moment. And so it was important that we understand what's being prepared, and what a lot of these groups are sort of trying to push agendas and that sort of stuff. Talking about black seed oil. Look, anything that gets extracted from a plant tends to be vulnerable to rancidity. It's unfortunate, but it's regard. I don't know enough about black seed oil to really tell you. It would depend on how much vitamin E content it had. It's a bit like palm oil. the higher the vitamin, it seems to basically be a bit more protective as long as it's extra virgin, sort of cold extracted and stuff like that. So it's hard to say. It's one of those things. But you don't need it. We get plenty of fats from good animal sources, which are much superior. Thanks, y'all.
You're welcome, Shab.
Oops.
It appears a giant insect has
Thanks for
entered
being
my
here,
room.
Richard. Yeah, look, it does sound a bit like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds bad.
Yes. Where are they? Okay. It has medical uses. Okay. I haven't actually heard about it. I'll look into it. Interesting. Now you've sort of touched my curiosity. I'll actually look into it. So there could be some sort of it could be a herbal thing, like it could be some sort of polyphenol that has a specific affects a specific pathway in a certain way, which may be interesting. There may be other things, alternatives, where you don't need exactly this sort of thing, where it could potentially have some rancidity, but there may be other compounds and other foods that actually have the same effect. So I always, I will go down a rabbit hole. I won't just basically go, oh, what are most people saying? I'm not interested in that. I'm really interested in basically, once I'll look at it from multiple angles. So expect something a bit more interesting than what the regular people would cover this specific area. You're welcome. It still sounds great. Yeah, it does. The witch from Trawley, did she now? God, I haven't even, lately I haven't bothered looking at any sort of, any sort of stuff which it has, I suspect that's about the black seed stuff. Yeah, I'll look into it. Don't worry. I'll check it out. Fennel flower.
Just a second.
Richard likes a bit of a tingle with feral flower, don't you, Richard? You were going to say?
No, just a second. I'll be back. I think there's a giant fly in my room. I need to kill it.
Don't worry. We're about to go. I'm about to shut down for the day because I've got to go over to Dan's. So I can't extend it further. So yeah, look, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
And, it's nice as usual.
Yeah, and it's good having Bart on. He went toe to toe with with lamps, which was interesting and fun. So nothing to excite the natives in that regard. But yeah. Thanks, Jill, as always.
Thanks, everyone. Nice being here as usual.
That's for you, mate.
It's actually trapped in the mesh, so I can kill it easily.
I don't think she's lost her mojo. It's a brain fog. That woman, you could actually see she was declining and starting to lose it. She was actually complaining that she couldn't actually do a job. Her diet is starting to affect her badly. And no level of supplementation is helping her at the moment. And I suspect that is why the witch from Trawley is basically declining rapidly. So, yes, she doesn't wake up to herself. She could end up in hospital at some point. Potentially, these people that are very fanatical, like Richard, who's passing out, is having brain fog and, shitting himself and all that, that's just not normal behavior. Passing out for 3 hours, you're in a sort of comatose state, that's like a protective mechanism for the body. There's something wrong with your lifestyle and all that. So, yeah. That's Bart's Discord. Yeah, so it's, yeah. Yeah, she didn't really have much mojo anyway. It was sort of like viral diarrhea that came out of her mouth, and she was vile and nasty towards a lot of people. Some of the stuff she said about people that were actually, having a hard time or sick or in great difficulty, she showed no sympathy to other people. She was extremely nasty in her language. So, yes.
Yeah. And it's weird that she's on the social psychology field, That's almost like mass manipulation, basically.
That's a nice way of calling him Veggie Berg.
Veggie Berg, yes. That's nice.
Yes, a nice one. We got a few laughs out of that.
Oh, God.
Yes. Anyway, there. Bart got the last laugh. Anyway, thanks guys for being here. Appreciate it. Take care, and I will see all you lovely people from North America in particular next week, and those who basically, are in the Asian area or the Australasian area, I will see you guys tonight. Which is about 4.5 hours from now. Mm-hmm. So in 4.5 hours, we'll have the Eurasian stream, and I think you'll all enjoy that. So there's always things that come out of Europe that that none of the rest of us hear, which is always good, because you'll get different crowds and different stuff that's coming out of different regions, and that's the reason why I've actually got into doing sort of this now as a regular thing, because I've got a sort of a lot of people from those sort of areas, sort of Europe and North America, nearly 50-50 of the non-Australasian sort of crowd, and so I wanted to be fair to both. Now that I've got the other one, now next week, obviously, I won't be using StreamYard. I'll be using the other service, because I'll have run out of hours, basically. So for the last week, which I don't mind using the other one, it's just a bit more cumbersome in some regards, and tends to sometimes not flow as well. It can sometimes, you can get some sort of effects where the streaming can basically get, even though I've got a fast connection, it's usually at their end, their server end, they're still developing themselves in that regard. So I want to use it sparingly, use all my StreamYard, and then shift to that for one. It'll only be on every month that it has 5 Sundays rather than 4. That's when I have to basically use the other service, because I just run out of hours on the StreamYard platform. So otherwise I'd have to pay for the full service, and I'm not interested in doing that, because it is a free service that I provide. So now that I've got an alternative, I can do more, and it still works. I mean, some people actually like the other one compared to StreamYard. I find StreamYard much easier as the operator to run, where the other one's a bit more cumbersome, but it still has, in terms of visual, it sort of has some nice features there to be able to pop up stuff you have to pay for on StreamYard. So, but anyway, I'll play around with it. Maybe I'll shift across to the other one more. I don't know yet. I'll see how it all goes. So anyway, I need to get going, because I have somewhere to be before I get a phone call from Dad. Where are you? I'm waiting for you. So anyway, thanks guys. See yous, and have a good weekend wherever you are on this planet, this revolving globe. See yous.
Bye-bye.